Monsters, creatures, legends. You know them. You slay them. But do you ever get to play them? Sure, defeating a giant in single combat, solving a sphinx's riddle, or even outwitting a devil is a lot of fun. But what if you were the giant, sphinx, or devil? What if you could become the monster? Well, now you can. Continuing the tradition of Year of Monsters, Roll for Combat is proud to present the Year of Legends. Every month, you'll receive a new legendary creature that you can play as a character for either 5e or Pathfinder. Now you too can play as a fallen angel, a stony gargoyle, a brain-eating seraphage, an ocular evil eye, a towering giant, a teeming swarmblood, a moon-blessed were-creature, a tree-like arboreal, a miraculous golemborn, an accursed lamia, an ominous psychopomp, or a riddling sphinx. You can get all this for less than a cup of coffee every month. But don't delay. If you back the Year of Legends Kickstarter now, you'll receive Devils, a bonus 13th ancestry at the start of the new year. These infernal creatures from hell are the perfect complement to January's other ancestry, Angels. If you back the Kickstarter today, you'll receive both Devils and Angels.
Oh, yeah. People are saying they hope that,
I moved
that
this on.
Ronald's...
We're live. How about that?
Oh, we're live?
Yeah, I pushed the button too early.
Oh, whoops. Whoops.
I saw a close-up of a cup of coffee.
Then I pushed
thought
the button.
we were still at that point about
yeah, well, I hit
cup
the
of
button. I
coffee.
was like fooling around, and I was like, oops. We're live.
That button can press at any time, and we hadn't even decided what's going to happen if we get to 100 likes. Someone in the chat said they hope that Ronald will sing, but he might not want to sing.
Since people
have you had people sing? I know that was one of your like goals before.
Yes, we've had most people sing, but not if they were too uncomfortable to sing.
People who've watched me know my voice has been recovering lately, so that would be particularly cruel.
Yeah,
I'm only guaranteeing there'll be more likes now.
There you go.
People don't like me bullying everyone, so Mark, you can figure out what people want to do.
Yeah, there we go. So just whatever you want. So if you're willing to do that to your voice a little bit, just make sure that you get enough to drink then, and that you don't strain it too much if it's on the recovery. But I think if you're willing to, we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be our 100 likes goal for the stream. And so this is it. 10 of 10, the grand finale with Rules Lawyer. We're going to go over GM Core later on. We don't need to put up the schedule that Steven puts up every time because this is the last one. The remaster itself is just coming out very soon. And so this is going to be our last preview, deep dive, and discussion stream. So if you get 100 likes, we'll see if Ronald will sing. And then also, as usual, we have a Kickstarter that is going. It is active. It has animated tokens that Steven's probably going to show you because they are cool. And there's a dog that's separate from the other ones. Yep. And it's going well. We recently unlocked Storm Giants thanks to probably a lot of people watching this. If anything I learned, it's that last week a lot of the people who were watching this stream is back to Kickstarter. And so we were able to unlock Storm Giants, and we're heading on to Ice Golems next. So it should be really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, since they have a new pet feat, maybe that's something you guys should build off of.
There you go. Well, I mean, you see the dog, the animated dog, you can have that for your pet.
Yeah, we have
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, I'd say about half of my games the characters have pets. And that's because I give them pets and then I tell them to make them part of their character, and they always do.
He even loves pets so much that we have Eldamon, and they have a pet form. If you don't have the class or the multi-class archetype, you can still have a bunch of them following around as pets that don't really do anything to help you, like win Pathfinder, but you still have like all these cute Eldamon following you around.
Yeah.
So if anything, Steven has been trying to get more pets in the game for years.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is actually a well-known thing. So one of my favorite, if not probably my favorite comic of all time, which I don't even know if you ever even heard of it. It's called Gru the Wanderer, which was out for
Gru the Wanderer.
Gru the Wanderer. It's been out for about 45 years, and there's a lot of issues. And it's by Sergio Aragonés from Mad Magazine. He's the guy who drew all those little sidebars, and the art is beautiful, and it's very funny. And it's basically, it was basically a takeoff of Conan the Barbarian, but he's a doofus, and he's goofy, but he's fun.
Wow, it was in May 1982. It appeared in issue number 1 of Destroyer Duck.
Destroyer Duck, which I have that one. I have all of them actually.
Wow.
I love it. It's my favorite thing. And anyhow, early in the series, he introduced a dog named Frodo, and it was just supposed to be like a one-off character, and everyone loved him so much that he never left. And now it's Gru and Frodo forever and ever. But it didn't start off that way. It just became a character. And it's like, what are you going to do? Get rid of the dog? And then the dog was more popular than Gru. And the dog was the smart one. So you'd see what the dog was thinking all the time. And then Gru, because Gru's extremely stupid. And he continuously causes trouble, but he's the best swordsman in the world. And it's actually a really, really, really good series, and the art is gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous. You can find it, and there's hundreds of issues. I mean, it's quite the quite the book if you're interested. Anyhow, then Stefan Dada, I love Gru. It changed my life. It does. It changed your life. It's so well done, and they have tons of recurring characters. One of the most amazing ones is they have a bard / troubadour who only speaks in rhyme, and he's in like half the issues. So I'm like, and he always sings. Everything he says, he's through song. And it's amazing.
Is that why you force your bard players to sing because of Gru the Wanderer?
He does it. Well, it's written by this guy. If you look them up, they're all comic book legends. The guy who wrote it, like ran Hanna-Barbera, and it's Mark Avner, and he has a blog that's incredibly popular. He's been around Hollywood forever. It's actually pretty interesting if you're interested in like old Hollywood. It's called News from Me, or I'll actually post it. It's fascinating because he talks about like Hollywood from the 50s and 60s on. So he's much older than me. And
there you go.
And he writes as much as you do, Mark. So there you go.
That's a lot.
That's too much.
It is too much. Thank you for acknowledging that it's too much, but it's all right. I'll do it anyway.
No, it's too much, and he does the same thing. And I'm like, how does this guy write so much? Anyhow, he's very funny.
It's a
While we're on the
blessing
topic
and
of pets, I want to throw out a hot take.
Okay, hot take.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why an ancestry can't take the human general feat heritage. Everyone should be able to have a pet at level 1 if they want to, or take adopted ancestry. There you go.
Okay, there you go. Or maybe instead of that, if you want humans to be more of the ones who could take any general feat, you could create a ancestry feat with no ancestry requirement or trait on it to have a pet instead. That could be another option where it's just like, this is a first level ancestry feat. It gives the pet general feat. Does it give you toughness? Does it give you fleet? Does it give you the other ones? No, it only gives you pet.
That sounds perfectly good. Since you can't, isn't there like a gnome familiar ancestry feat at level 1? It would be perfectly balanced. There you go.
There you go.
I approve.
Yeah. Gnomes have it. Quite a few ancestries get a familiar at level 1, and many of our roll for combat battle zoo ancestries can too. Including Angel, the first one for your legends. They often have like a dove or like a white rat or something like that as their little like celestial emissary. So yeah, no, that was a good hot take. So any hot takes or discussions that we want to have during this episode is good. It doesn't have to be only limited to GM Core, because this is also kind of our retrospective on everything we've done up till this point. In the same way that our first day, we kind of talked a little bit about things in GM Core, even though it was not the GM Core day. Same here. I know Steven has a hot take or two too. So we can definitely get into everybody's hot takes. I have at least a few good topics for GM Core that we're going to cover. Now, for everyone watching, you may have known from our other streams that I wrote down every change in the classes that I could find by doing a close read analysis word by word. There is a lot of book in GM Core, and I did not do a close read analysis word by word of everything in GM Core. So we're going to talk about some of the broad changes, some of the interesting things that we found in GM Core, and then anything that wasn't in GM Core that was throughout this entire process that we find interesting or want to do a hot take on. Some people in chat want to know about lukewarm takes too.
I also have some hot takes in my recent videos. There might be some topics coming from chat.
Oh man.
Thinking about
there you go.
Too.
So real quick, so if you have questions, ask them in chat. If you super chat, we'll definitely answer them. Like and subscribe and check out the Discord channel. I guess we need to tell people about that. You can just go to just go to discord.rollforcombat.com and join. We have games and contests and
I told Steve how big my Discord was.
I know. I couldn't believe it. It's bigger than ours.
Yeah.
And
Steven's
now I got to start promoting
you got
it more.
Thousands of people, but not as many thousands.
We have like 3.5 thousand.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wait. And
Ronald
has like 4 point something thousand. So
4,500.
Yeah. So we have 3,500. So I got to guys, shut up. We've run over 1,000 Pathfinder and Starfinder Society games. Actually, we're probably up to over 2,000 easily.
Nice.
I mean, there's a lot of games going on. I used to number the tables, but I stopped at a long time. A long time ago, we stopped. Yeah, we've been doing that. But the big thing is people ask questions, and Mark camps out on that Discord, because even today someone had questions about monster parts, and people always have questions about.
Yep.
Other
people gave good answers, so I didn't answer
the good
that
news
one.
Is 9 times out of 10 someone else will answer for us before we even get to it, which is nice. Or Mark will jump on there as fast as possible.
Oh, yeah. Actually, the one from today, the person themselves found the sidebar. Because my answer would usually have been to them about automatic bonus progression with monster parts. I have a sidebar for that.
Well, he's like,
automatic bonus progression.
Automatic bonus progression. They found it. And then he's like, never mind. I found it. It was like right there.
We covered that corner case.
We got every corner case. Speaking of corner cases, the Year of Monsters, we have intelligent weapons coming out. 11,000 words of how to play an intelligent weapon. It is,
and unlike She, which was around that length, it's mostly like lots of rules.
Can you have a customizable humanoid holding you?
Yes.
Is it like
yeah?
Oh god!
Yeah.
You usually have something like that.
Yeah.
There's also rules for
command wielder.
There's 3 different types of wielders you could have.
Yeah, so you can either be an animated weapon where you're just floating around, or you can be a projecting weapon, because in some fiction, they project a wielder that's not really like it's just their projection to hold them. That's one of the things that the Soul Calibur Soul Edge can do. It also can possess people. Speaking of which, possessing an empty vessel, and there's a line in there if you really want to get into evil stuff, that maybe you're possessing some innocent person, but most groups probably don't want to get into that. So an empty vessel, like an empty clone or something like that. Then there's the one where it's just some schmo who doesn't realize that their weapon is like guiding them around, and they just think they're awesome. And so you get the schmo basically is able to share your stats, but is maybe a turnip farmer, is good at farming, or maybe is good at deception, and they sort of know that they're not doing it, but they're lying to everybody. Like, this is all me. And so they have like one skill that's their own. But then there's also a section at the end where it's just like, wait, I don't actually want to be autonomous. I know I bought a book called Battlezoo Ancestry's Intelligent Weapons, but I don't want to be an ancestry at a class. I just want to be a weapon that my party fighter is holding. That is like, what if you just want to be an item for your character that doesn't do anything autonomously? And we have that too. So there's lots of weird options.
It goes on. It's like we covered everything. Everything we could think of. And even like how you don armor or how you get armor on you, and it's crazy. How you use items. It's like you're an item using items, and yeah.
So you can item while you item.
Yeah, that's right. And it's nuts. Anyhow, so we will get to GM Core. I am waiting for questions and
let's go into GM Core.
Okay.
We're almost at 100 likes already, so we're probably gonna have to have Ronald sing at some point later on. But let's take a look into GM Core. So the GM Core book, when we started talking about Player Core, I essentially mentioned that it's roughly the core rulebook's player section with the items removed, with some of the classes removed, but the witch added in, and then the class sections and spell sections and the feat sections often have everything from the core rulebook and the advanced player's guide that are relevant for those sections. And so anytime that the Player Core 1 did not do that, I noted it in my notes. So if an advanced player's guide feat was missing from a class, I was like, well, now that's missing. The GM Core is slightly different. It's got the GM information and the items from the original core rulebook, plus generally it has things from the Game Master Guide. Now, obviously, its number of pages is such that it can't have all of those things. So there's actually big sections that are missing from GM Core, unlike Player Core 1, where there kind of weren't, or we knew they were being moved to GM Core. There are some big sections that are missing and probably won't get printed, or we can speculate where they're going to be. And the two I noticed in the reorganization that were just flat out missing were the NPCs and most of the variant rules from the original Game Master Guide are missing in GM Core. And so that's something to note. That doesn't mean you can't use those NPCs or those variant rules. You can use them from Archives of Nethys or the original Game Mastery Guide, but they won't be in there for someone who started with GM Core. And I want to start by thinking about those NPCs because they took up a ton of space in the original Game Master Guide, but I feel like they're pretty useful to GMs to have stock humanoid opponents, and even to adventure authors who are like want to reference a humanoid. So it got me thinking, are the core gonna not have those? Because if they have them, then it would have to be in Monster Core. But we have the page up for the product page for Monster Core on paizo.com. And that product page has a lot of descriptive text, and it has selling points like over 400 individual monster write-ups, including common animals like wolves and bears, and terrifying supernatural foes like Rune Giant and Grim Reaper. 8 brand new dragons, classic monsters drawn from mythology and the legends of the Lost Omen setting. Simple templates to customize your monster, guidelines for reading through monsters, lists of creatures sorted by type and level, all of those things. But it doesn't say that it's got humanoid opponents, which I think is a worthwhile enough thing that it might convince someone to buy it or look into it. It's like, oh, that's actually something I like. So like, it's something you might put in those marketing bullet points, but that isn't in there. So I want to hear what Ronald thinks about whether or not, in fact, the humanoid NPCs would be in the Monster Core or just not in any of the core. Because I think they're not going to be in Player Core 2.
Well, I could have sworn on one of the streams, I think I said this in one of my videos, they mentioned something like about a halfling gnome fighter or something in the core book. But I agree with you, Mark. that they would have put it in the product copy. I don't think there's going to be an NPC codex, and I don't know what they were referring to in that stream. It wouldn't fit under the current how the bestiary is conceived. But some people are saying in chat what I said in the video. I think that they probably are saving it for some future product. Is my theory. It would be a popular product, I think, to have. Well, in the first edition, we had the NPC codex, and that I don't know if they would need to approach it the exact same way, though. The NPC codex had stats of NPCs for every single level of every single class. Well, core class.
The NPC codex had its issues, and it definitely did not shine among communities. Like, I was in the fan community at the time, and among the people I knew, and from all that I could tell, the NPC codex didn't do that well. Whereas the monster codex, the one that had here's the chapter on goblin NPCs, here's the chapter on ogre NPCs, was super popular. And I remember its pawn sold out almost immediately, because whether you're a Pathfinder player, a D&D player, or something else, a pawn set that has some 12 different pieces, or however many pieces of art that are different goblins with different weapons and armor, and then multiple copies of some of the soldiers and things like that, is an absolutely fantastic for its value thing that any GM would want, whether you're running Pathfinder or not. And so that thing sold out immediately.
My guess as to why that is that it's more useful for the GM. I mean, each chapter was kind of like you can design an adventure or a quest around these 10 stat blocks around goblins.
Yes.
And I like how the current game mastery guide is. It had
it'll be like law or guards. Yeah.
A section on laborers. Yeah. When you're trying to come up with something on the fly, you're like, okay, what's the type of person I need right now? And then you look it up. Whereas the NPC codex for first edition, you're not thinking I need a level 14, barbarian. You're not thinking that.
Yeah.
You're thinking, they want to talk to the barkeep and and there's a bar fight breaking out. And so what do I use?
Right.
People are thinking that more. Maybe some kind of combined NPC monster codex.
Yeah.
Franken book.
It could be good.
Yeah.
I think that there's a risk among game designers, game developers, and some people of wanting symmetry and completion and filling in all the boxes, sometimes to the detriment of a product. And I feel that the desire to be we need every class and we need an NPC for every level from 1 to 20 of every class is an example of those checking all the boxes at the expense of the product's usefulness. Because of, how many times do you actually need? Not only would you need them to be of that level and exactly that class, but they often had very many of them had very weird builds. So it's okay, yes, I actually do need exactly a gnome, or even might have needed a gnome of this level, and that was right. But it has this weird unarmed attack build that this class normally doesn't use. I remember adventure authors and developers running into that problem where they wanted to use NPC codex in Pathfinder 1 to save word count on the stat block, and it was all the ones that are in this level range are really weird or not exactly what we're looking for.
And also, NPCs are built differently in 2E. I mean, at higher levels, you would have a whole bunch of feats for, I think, those higher level NPC codex ones. And it just seems like there's a different, there isn't that same, I don't even know if it would enter their minds right now to create a level 18 champion built the way a player would be built, which actually I think they were using how to build a PC rules for the NPC codex.
For Pathfinder 1, that was the only way that you built NPCs. They were at a big disadvantage because their stats and gear were much worse, so they were just drastically weaker than a PC, but they were otherwise built exactly the same way. You're definitely correct.
Larson in chat says all have wrestling, and that makes me think one section could be
wrestlers,
gladiator opponents. That could be,
Luchadores.
yeah, that could be a little mini section that I'm sure GMs would find useful. Like, there's so many kinds of things GMs want to, pluck.
It writes itself. The sidebar would be like wrestler names, like with points, right? It writes itself. It definitely does.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say, I think that the absence of it in the ad copy is when I saw that it was missing at first, I was like, oh well, it's definitely going to be in the monster core. But the absence of it in the ad copy really makes me think maybe it's not going to be in monster core. So I still think it might be in monster core, because I feel like that's something that it's weird not to have any of it in the core, both from the perspective of the home GM and for adventure authors to be able to reference it. But I no longer think it's overwhelmingly likely because it's not in the ad copy.
Mm-hmm. In the monster manual for D&D, there's like 8 pages of some things. Maybe we could find something like that. Like, people do want to know the stats of a commoner, I suppose.
Well, I'm going to take a very different approach to all of this.
Okay.
Like, totally different to all of you. First of all, Amusement Overlord says, I want Steven's twisted NPCs. You want them, you get them. Good, get Jewel of the Indigo
Jewel
Isle.
of the Indigo Isles.
We got hundreds of NPCs in there, baby, and statted out and everything. Or World of Battle Zoo Indigo Isles, which just came out.
Got some NPCs. They don't have the stats.
Hundreds of NPCs,
there's lots of
pictures and tokens.
Yes. Also, just so everyone knows about Jewel of the Indigo Isles, because this is absolutely non-standard for the industry and arguably not a good idea. But Steven ordered art of like basically every named NPC in Jewel of the Indigo Isles adventure path. Mm-hmm. To my knowledge, there's no adventure path other than Jewel where the person who was being is like, this NPC was named slightly here because they play at you in a game of chance at some point during a festival. Actually, that may have been one of the people.
Oh, including non-combat NPCs?
Yes, it was
every single one.
This person plays a gambling game, or they might play a game of chance if the PCs decide to go to that stall. They need a piece of art. And it just it blew my mind that Steven had ordered all that art. So I want people to know that he did.
There's a lot of art in this book, to say the least. This book is a monster. It's a monster of itself.
Anyhow. So people in chat are the Paizo adventure authors not allowed to reference the old books anymore? My guess is that they won't, because of the fact that they're going to want a clean orc license on the new products, so that they won't ever reference the OGL ones, because that will force you to put in the OGL because of the way that the OGL works. And they're not going to want to put the orc and the OGL for certain sections of the products because that's complicated.
Yeah. Well, anyhow,
and
they want to get rid of the OGL
too. So, you don't want to anything in the future saying, "Oh, this revenue is dependent on the OGL."
Yeah. So let me tell you what I would do, or what should be done. So this is the problem with NPCs, because I got the NPC book. I actually remember I was very excited when it came out, and I got the NPC Codex. But the biggest problem with the NPC Codex is that it, as big as it was, it still didn't have nearly enough, because I always need something very specific. So this is begging for an online tool, a component in Foundry, where you just literally fill in what you need, and this can be done pretty easily. Maybe I'll even do it, is that you just put in, what level does it need to be? Does it need a class? Is it a commoner, a fighter, a magic? We come up with some categories. You press a button, boom, it makes it. And that's what you need. It's like
the classes have roadmaps now, so you could at least put in a skeleton of it and be like, this is the roadmap.
And it just makes it.
We suggest that you add possibly a few of these features that we're listing in a box on the right. Just click, drag and drop them into the step block
People
or something
are saying
like that.
that there's lots of these exist already, and there are, and there's websites that do this. This is not uncommon. This is what I'm describing is definitely been done before, but I don't know if it's been done for Pathfinder. It looks like for 5e there's tons of them, but it's actually the thing is that is what you need. You don't need a book, because to be honest, I don't think it would sell that great. It really wouldn't. But a module, that would, well, it's hard to make it sell that, but that is what would do very well, because
I feel like an NPC section in the bestiary, even though it's never been done in PF1 or in PF2 before, that would be useful and could help with the bestiary in some ways.
No, what they do is do it like you do with monsters, is have a system where you can make NPCs quickly and easily on the fly.
You definitely want to do that already,
right? But that would be more useful. It's like here's the steps to make any type of NPC in, like, in 1 minute.
Well, good news, because that is already in the GM core, and that did not, as far as I could tell, change by any appreciable amount from what it was before.
Was that what page is that? What steps?
Before you get to the GM core, I want to say one point about lopping off the NPC codex.
Okay.
What I edited this out of my video. I am, they have to worry about space. The book is already like 300 something, and the player core is 460. Yes. And I think some people will still be intimidated by the size of the book.
They will.
The player core. Right. I'm holding up the Absalom book, which is the biggest book I have right now, which is pretty chunky. Here's the game mastery guide for comparison.
Right.
The Absalom book is 400 pages. So you can see, by the way, I teach middle schoolers. They would rip things off the shelf. But that's going to be the Absalom book plus 60 more pages. So I think they were concerned about.
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
I think that's what we said right at the beginning when about the things being removed out, is that for word count they had to find something, and that was a long section. It was an easy thing to remove, even though it was a very useful thing to include.
It's much. You know what? I disagree. That's a PDF. I mean, that really is. That is a PDF, maybe even a softcover book at most. But they're getting very price conscious. They're getting very careful. Gone are the days where Paizo was putting out splat books every month. The softcover splat books for everything you can imagine. Those are gone forever, and now it's becoming a world of, we put out hardcovers for only what we really need to put out, and everything else is going to be online, and that's just the reality. I mean, that's just the way it is. So.
I mean, I think that it's not about price consciousness only for the length of the books, but
space.
Literally on a size sticker shock, like Ronald was saying, people are like, this game can't possibly be for me. The book is so long, it must be hard. When it's really, the book is so long because it combined 2 books and is encyclopedic, but there's only a little bit you really need before you could even get started.
Well, also, bookstores don't really shelf softcover books anymore, unless they're manga. They only do hardcover. So because of that, it has to be a certain size. Long story short is, like, you need to do an NPC codex as a hardcover. It has to be $50 to $60, and it still wouldn't have nearly enough. It's a lot more efficient to do that as a PDF for $25, $30 and have it gigantic, or way better yet, is just write a freaking tool and put it in Foundry or something, and then just, because that will help. I mean, I would use that all the time. I mean, I would constantly use that.
I'm going to try the 50 pages in the NPC code, not the current game mastery guide, were pretty useful. What I would like is a tool to just be able to say, I want this to be level 6 instead of level 3.
Right. That's what I was just saying. Yeah, you put in the level, you put in all the parameters, and then it just makes
Steven, RPGSuperstar.com at least gives some of the numbers that you need. If you just put in the level,
I know, I already wrote it. I wrote it for monsters.
So you got that for monsters already.
I know.
Okay. But here's what I'm going to say, Steven. You've put out multiple different possibilities. I'm going to try to rank what I think are from most to least likely. So I think that near the top are is the NPCs somehow actually are in Monster Core, or they are added as a section to some other related book that we don't know about yet. Then less likely, I think, is they make a giant hardcover that is the NPC codex, but for Pathfinder 2. And I think least likely is they make a digital only product that is the same thing that you just said, Stephen, the $20 to $30 PDF that is full of NPCs. I think that's the least likely thing for Paizo to do as their official stance on where are those NPCs at. But we'll see. I don't have any inside information about this, so I think we're going to have to find out. But it's interesting and fun to speculate. By the way, Stephen, it's page 112 is the thing that you were asking where it was. But I want to move back a moment because the other big section that got removed was basically the variant rules chapter was removed. And I say that, but there are 4 pages that are still in there. And it still has automatic bonus progression rules that, like, I wrote the variant rules chapter, like the whole variant rules chapter. I'm a big fan of variant rules for the original game mastery guide. So it's still got the automatic bonus progression I wrote. Unfortunately, it did not cover some of the like adjudication and corner cases that I should have covered in the original anyway. It's the same one from the original times. It's got free archetypes. It's got level 0 characters and proficiency without level. So it's an interesting set of choices. I think that automatic bonus progression and free archetype were almost certainly 2 of the most popular variant rules. I think the other 2 were not necessarily, but proficiency without level is a good choice. And of course they would include it because, you know, there's other systems out there that are using proficiency without level and that many people may be familiar with, such as 5e. So it can be a good onboarding tool. And total guess is that level 0 characters was like a good length to sort of fit in with those. And among the other ones that could have gone in there, I mean, I don't feel that level 0 characters were really used as much as those first 2.
By the way, this is for building creatures, which is just a recreation of what we do with the
it also has NPCs.
I guess it does. I guess you're right. But
it does. It has entire recipes for NPCs depending on their class. And
where's that?
It's in the roadmap section. So that would be under building creatures.
Building NPCs. You meant page 128.
Yeah, well, I told you where the section started, but page 128 is where the recipes for the NPCs are.
Not specific enough.
Class roadmaps are on 129 then, Stephen. That's even more specific.
I was looking at that. Actually, was also this is so weird. Of all the pages, because I was flipping through this book, and that's the page I stopped on. I was like, "Ooh, what's this?" And that actually was that was the page actually that was very interesting. I was like, "This is great. We have all the roadmaps for the classes." I don't know if that was in the book before, but it's nice now. I don't think it was.
The roadmaps for the classes were in the books before. We wrote a roadmap for all of them.
Got it. Well, let me tell you a secret. So
Logan and I did a lot of work on that.
All right. Well,
Steven.
I guess I only saw it now, so it took 5 years for me to look at it.
Oh no.
I have not looked at the original GM guide since it came out.
That's because you wrote an online system that automates it and probably used that ever after that.
Well, that too, and also for some reason, A, I use online rules, and B, I don't know. Like I've memorized the rules for what I need to know, and then the way we play, and I'd be curious how you play, Ronald, is I have the rules. The rules are as I need to know my rules and how the game runs and general rules for the GM, but players need to know how to run their characters. And it's not my job to know how to run the PCs. It's the PC's job. And I actually get kind of angry when they're like, I don't know how this works, because I'm like, dude, I have enough to deal with. I don't need to know how to run your 15th level cross, like your characters are so complex at these levels and you have so many, items and like you need to know the intricacies of your character, not me. You have to know how to deal with it. And if anything, I have the other PCs help out.
You came to my court unprepared?
Pretty much. That's exactly right. You come to my court unprepared, I punish you. But I'm like, I'm not going to answer your question because I don't know, or I'll try, but I'm like, dude,
I don't know.
It's your character. You should know. But
for me, if there's something like that, everyone the players and the GM will try to help that one player to figure it out, and we'll usually have a discussion if it's something that's ambiguous.
Yeah, the other
and try
players
to come
usually
to a
help out.
social consensus.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what my group does most of the time. But if it's just one person who keeps forgetting the same rule over and over again, then someone at the table, it's usually another player, will just remind them, oh yeah, it's this again, like always. And it happens sometimes.
Happens all the time, and that's why I have extensive notes. So when they press their attack button in our online BTT, it literally has the notes for everything they need to remember, and I like bolded and highlighted and underlined. They're like, how does this work again? I'm like, look in your attack. And they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, anyhow.
Mm-hmm. So
on variant rules that are not included, there was a couple things I missed, though I understand people can find these things on the online game mastery guide. The Ancestral Paragon was popular among some of my players.
I like that, especially with the dragon ancestry.
Yeah. And simplified skills too, I thought might be good for some GMs who, want to be less granular and about how they run skills. And I'm not saying this is a big omission, but I thought the deep backgrounds charts were fun for a certain kind of player.
I like them too. Actually, that was the one variant that I didn't write initially. Ron Lundeen did some of those charts, and then I did a design pass on them. Whereas I just wrote from scratch pretty much everything else in that chapter. I like those. Ron did a great job on those. Yeah. Not you, Ronald. Ron, the other lawyer, who is also a game person. Easy to confuse. Yeah, I feel like I'm a little sad that all of those are gone now. As someone who just I love tinkering with the game. I love variant rules. And I love the sort of spirit of just sort of encouraging people to mod their game and to make it work for them that I felt the chapter gave. But on the other hand, as the one who wrote and championed for that much space in the original Game Mastery Guide to have that, I totally agree that since they needed to cut something, that variant rules is the right place to cut the book because it's variants and you need to at least get the regular rules in before you can.
And if you're thinking of varying your game, you're probably online anyway looking on forums. Hey, I apologize. My computer's doing this annoying thing, and maybe someone who's good with computers in chat can help, but my computer suddenly starts to automatically tune my volume down to 0.
I know why.
Why?
Do you have something else open other than Zoom?
Several windows.
No, and like you have another. Because Zoom will automatically try to change your volume unless you tell it not to. Well, most streaming.
This happens when I'm not in Zoom. Also, let me try to close Discord. Let me see.
All right.
It might be Discord. Basically,
could be.
These.
But I'm warning you, I might need to reboot. That's usually what I've had to
don't do that.
Don't
reboot.
Otherwise, I won't be able to hear you.
I
don't have the lips feet.
That would be a problem if he couldn't hear us at all. So I'll go through while Ronald's doing that. So there's a super chat. If your players can't be bothered or don't seem interested in learning complex characters, is there value in a more rules light system for your group? I think that is possible.
No. This is a problem with my players, not with the characters. We play any game, checkers, and they will forget the rules. And this is only really one person specifically.
Oh, that's fair enough. So you have to know what the group consensus is if it's just one person.
Yes.
So I found there was a cool, interesting note in chat of Lazarus Dark saying proficiency without levels is not for beginners. It requires a lot of fiddling understanding. Should be for advanced GMs, in their opinion, not 5e converts. Yes and no. I think you're right. Absolutely. I wrote the rules for proficiency without level. I did a lot of the math behind it. It's still very complicated, and those rules of thumb that are in there are not 100% rules of thumb for how it works. It is not as stable of a game as when you do the normal game. However, what it is still good for potentially for 5e converts who bounce off the fact that they're just like, I refuse to play this game because it has a modifier that's this high. And they're like, what if you didn't have level? They'd be like, oh yeah, I'll play it immediately. That's fine. That's the only reason I refuse to play it. So whether it's a good idea or not from a technical standpoint of that it's harder to use, and so it actually makes the game harder for them. I agree with Lazarus Dark, but it still is one thing that's different that they might not like. And so I think it's worthwhile as an ambassador, even if it's a very recalcitrant ambassador, I suppose.
No, by the way, Ronald, there is someone, Ken Powell. He actually, I did this so long ago I forgot, but yeah, if you go to System
Unplugging your
Sound,
keyboard, that sounds promising.
No, don't do that
Oh.
one. Do the other one above that, where you go under System Sound, more sound settings, communications. There's a thing where what it tries to do is it lowers the volumes based on you talking so you can be heard, and it changes your volumes around. You should basically turn off all those features where it tries to change the volume of your talking.
Okay.
Discord does that too. It's called auto attune. Auto.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a couple of minutes not hearing you guys as I fiddle.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Or try to unplug your keyboard. That might work.
while
too.
Ronald is fiddling, we got to over 100 likes, so maybe people in chat can decide what we're going to do. It may be some forced singing for Ronald once he is able to hear us again, but he can't hear us right now, so we can scheme. Although he probably can read what you're saying in chat, so we'll never know. Yeah, I see people with suggestions of other things that could have been kept instead of level 0 characters. I agree that level 0 characters is pretty niche, but like it gives you like a different conceptual thing that you can do, which something like Ancestry Paragon or Gradual Ability Boost is more of like a mathematic adjustment. And it's kind of easy to come up with Ancestry Paragon. That being said, I put it in there because Ancestry Paragon was not like a required one that all the other designers said we had to include. I put it in there because I wanted to give you permission that was in the published Paizo book. So yes, it's easy to come up with the idea of doubling it, but if you don't have permission in a published Paizo book, you might be like, oh, I'm afraid to do that. And so I do think it has value from that regard, but level 0 characters lets you tell a different story. It lets you tell a prequel. So I do see why it might have been chosen for that rationale, whereas like Gradual Ability Boost is not a different story, it's just a different way of increasing things. Even if it wasn't the most popular and not that many people use level 0 characters, it just has more bang for your buck with the number of page space in it, probably.
So what was changed in GM Core? I mean,
what was changed other than the removals? You mean?
Well, yeah, because like, so the interesting about GM Core, and I mean, when Ronald, maybe when he hears this, is that the thing about GM Core is like, it's fascinating because it really is a book that tells you how to be a GM, which it's funny because if you look at past books and you go back to like first, second, third edition, like those books were really just rules and things about like how to be a GM was non-existent. That stuff just didn't exist. But over the last few years, I feel like that has really taken center stage, where it's really just this is how, and it teaching people like how to run exploration, how to run a social encounter, how to run like a library system, how to run a winter trek. It's like how to run underwater. Like it's basically a vast majority of the book now is like how to be a GM, and the rules actually make up the smallest part of the book overall. Because I was looking at this for hundreds of pages, and they're just going over like.
I don't think that's right.
Okay.
I'm not saying I disagree with your philosophy. I'm just saying I don't think that's mathematically correct.
Maybe not.
The entire chapter that's about running the game, which also has important rules about running the game that were taken from the core rulebook, is only 58 pages.
Okay, fair enough.
Right?
Well, Well, my point is that to me, I don't know. I'm just. I guess I'm wrong then.
but I know why you are thinking of it this way, and it's partially because of a weird little story that I can tell you about the Game Mastery Guide and its organization. But first, there were 2 super chats that suddenly came in.
Mm-hmm.
One said, "What skills are the best to develop to get into game design? Is Infinite a good way to get through your foot in the door?" I will say that whatever your talent is that you already have, that your interest is, what you're good at, lean on that. And that's usually a good way to get into game design. Obviously, you need to shore up your weaknesses too. But if you lean on your talent, that can help you by being a hook. And Alfred Miller just said, "Just showing support, roll for combat, love your show. The rules lawyer rules." So
I've probably heard that.
Okay.
Hey, I'm sorry, Steve. I've tried the 2 solutions. I think I need to reboot. That's
you're
my only solution.
My layout.
I know.
All right.
Can you put on some other kind of scene for 2 minutes?
Figure it out. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead and reboot. I'm going to tell a little story, and you can watch it later if you want to hear a game mastery guide in the weeds development story. Okay. So to Steven's point, I think the reason, Steven, that you are seeing it that way and seeing the first chapter especially, which actually has a lot of rules now that were taken from the core rulebook that way, is because the organization of the original game mastery guide was such that it actually had a bunch of advanced GM advice for like how to kick your game up a notch in the first chapter. Mm-hmm. And we had a name that was kind of like what the first chapter is now called, which is like running the game. I can't remember exactly what the name was, but with the leads, the leads of the book who would normally be contacted about this, none the wiser, it was changed to be called Game Mastery Basics, just like at the last minute. And we all were like, why is it called that? Because it's not the basics. And it was a large section of the first Game Mastery Guide and the starting section. And like as a way of organizing the book, it would make a game master who thinks of themselves as experienced and having known the basics not want to read that section, even though it actually has a ton of useful information for them, because that section went far beyond the basics and covered some pretty advanced topics. And so this time, GM Core does not do that. It does have a subsection of the subsection called Basics of Running the Game that is pages like 6 through let me see, 14. So it's got like, what is that, 9, 10 pages? It's 8, I guess, because it was 6 minus 14 is 8, but usually you have to add 1. So maybe it's 9-page section. That's all about the basics, and nothing else is the basics here. Those are basics that would have been taken from the game master section of the core rulebook. And now that whole section is just called Running the Game. And it's got rules of running the game, the encounter stuff from the core rulebook, and the Game Mastery Guide is combined. It's a great way to do the organization. I love how that was reorganized together. And I think it makes it easier to use than flipping between both books was before. And I like chapter 1. Chapter 2, Building Games, is basically very similar to what the GM Toolbox chapter from before, except for with variant rules chapter having been kind of destroyed and the pieces of it sawed off and put into there. Then it has chapter 3, The Age of Lost Omens, which is essentially the setting section from the core rulebook originally, has been taken and put here for the Game Master, which kind of makes sense. It's longer. There is one thing about this one. So I just love organization of chapter 1, no notes. Love organization of chapter 2, no notes. Chapter 3, the fact that the nation and settlement stat block rules are in the Lost Omens chapter is maybe I would have wanted to see them in the Building Worlds section of Building Games chapter 2. I think that may be a harder place to find them than before. And you're going to have to always remember it was in the Lost Omens section and not in chapter 2. So that's maybe one of the few new organization things that I'm less of a fan of. But overall, the organization is far better than Game Mastery Guide. Then the subsystem chapter, which is basically the exact same subsystem chapter from the Game Mastery Guide, is in GM Core. And the Treasure Trove, which has a typo in the link here in the bookmarks, but it's not in the actual book, and is basically the treasure section from the core rulebook with some advanced player's guide, some new items that were not even there before, some renamings for OGL. And that's how it's organized now. So I see why you would have
The
thought.
Bag of Holding has a new name.
Yeah. Well, it had to.
Yeah. It has. I liked its name. I'm going to look it up.
And Andrew Johns wondered if infiltration and chase rules changed. And I did not go word for word through them in a way where I was trying to like parse it out, but they look the same.
So Ronald
Bag of
was
Holding
back.
is now the spacious pouch.
Yes, spacious pouch.
And there's a picture.
Boo.
No, you don't like it? You know, I wanted to have a stream where we chat voted on every name change.
There you
and
go.
Decided to and said which was better.
I think I'm about 80 to 90% on the new
The thing
ones.
is, a lot of it though is our historical knowledge. Most people hear Bag of Holding and it sounds like a redundant word.
Dude, I've had the word
holds.
bag of holding since I was like a kid, so it's
See, there you go. You're
it's
admitting
hard
it.
of course I admit it. It's hard to remove something like that because also
If the word had been if it had gone in the reverse, we'd all be like, "What? Bag of Holding's a stupid name."
no,
I'm totally good with the new name on that one, but I do see the nostalgia glasses on the other. I'm 80 to 90% in favor of the new ones. There's a few though.
no, I disagree.
Mithril, even if it wasn't the Tolkien one, I just feel like the use of the word myth in it gives you this feeling of being just kind of mystical, this mystical resource. And Dawn Silver just kind of seems like a portmanteau. It's like one of the only ones where I'm pretty strongly like the one that came before, but I like the new names like almost every time.
I'll tell you a secret. So there was actually Stephen King wrote an amazing review of the Harry Potter books in the New York Times, and one of the things he wrote about was when it came to language and the feel of words when it's both spoken out loud and even in your mind, that Rawlings, J.K. Rowling's was really good at it. Like that was one of her biggest strengths. And a lot of these words, I think, and names of items lasted through the test of time, not just because of what they did, but because they had good mouthfeel or interesting. And they were, if there's one thing D&D was good at, it's naming things. Dungeons and Dragons, Bag of Holding, Magic Missile, like they were very good at these names, and these names stood the test of time because there was a lot of that didn't, and those aren't around. You don't remember them as much. So it's not as simple as, oh, let's just change the name. It's like, no, you're going up against a lot more than just a name. Like changing Magic Missile to whatever is it called now? It's a Force Barrage or something. It's never going to be as good. I mean, it's going to be it's impossible to make that better. It's just not going to happen. And these are it's like evolution. It's like these have gone through natural evolution of game systems, game players, game mechanics, and words have been changed for games and systems and methods and magic items and spells that did not make it through the test of time, and these have. So unfortunately, I get and I know why they had to change them, but almost all of them I think are not as good. They might be
strong
fine.
disagree with Steven. I think that the names that made it through the test of time, that doesn't mean anything. It's nostalgia glasses. I'm not saying Magic Missile's not a good name, but some of the names of those spells and abilities are terrible, and they still made it through all of these editions because if you changed it, it would have made people upset. But I changed some of them in Pathfinder 2, like Hold Person. That was awful. That is a terrible name.
While going through my comparing of spells, current spell Magic Aura does not mean Magic Aura. It's actually what it does is hide the aura of magic of something, or make something non-magical seem magical. It's not actually doing a magic aura. But I do think Magic Missile is a better name, though. It has alliteration. Yes.
I actually like Magic Missile.
Yeah.
That's one of the ones I say 80 to 90% for the new ones, but Hold Person was bad. You know what was the worst? Turn undead. Literally, a decent number of people thought that let you transform into an undead. Like I know multiple people have heard stories of someone who, like, a new player.
I've never heard that
there
in
was
my
a
life,
big,
ever. Not once.
big dangerous monster was coming up, and she was like, "Okay, guys, I'm gonna do a Gandalf. You shall not pass." And they're like, "You're gonna die." It's like, "Don't worry, everybody get out," because it was like a monster they couldn't defeat, and then it smashed her to death. And she was like, they were like, "But you died," and she said, "Don't worry, guys, I've got turn undead on my cleric, and so I come back as an undead." And everyone's like, "No, that's not what it does."
So
because
you say majority of people in 48 years, I've never heard that.
you've
ever.
never heard of
Not
people
once.
got confused by
Not
the name
once.
turn undead and didn't
In
know what it
48
was until you were
years,
told?
Never. Not once.
Really?
No.
I think I've almost never heard of anyone who knew what it did until they were told what it did. They were like, "Turn undead, what's that? Does it turn you into undead?"
Nope.
It's like, no, it makes them turn around, I guess.
I don't know. I've never heard that story, ever. That's the first I've ever heard of that in my entire life.
I must say, since we're talking about the magic item section, that the sidebar is a godsend. The core rulebook magic item section was very hard to navigate.
Yes.
You had
The sidebar nav is better, and the way that it's able to be organized is far better.
Yeah, before you had to, alchemical items were grouped together unless it was a consumable. Then it was a subset of the consumables under which were grouped the scrolls and other things. Also,
that is
now
sort of still happening in the momentary magic section, being where the consumables are, but it's still easier.
No,
to
alchemical items are not magical, so they're not under that.
Yeah, but alchemical items were never in the same section with the other consumables.
Oh, maybe I'm mixing up.
But they just came first.
I was just generally confused. Also, the weapon runes are with the weapons now. They're right next to the weapons.
I like that. You know, it was pretty confusing before, and I think it's easier to navigate it by far. And the sidebar helps a lot here. So there's a lot of things are just going to be renamed or still pretty similar to what you expect in this section. There's a few things that are different, just like new options. Like there's an astral rune that is just better than all the other damaging runes because it also gives you ghost touch. It's also odd because astral is like the mind plane and it doesn't do mental damage. It does spirit. I guess I would have thought that would be called ethereal, but it's a really cool rune. There's like a shockwave rune that does splash damage on your bludgeoning weapon. Like, so there's some new stuff in here that I don't remember seeing before.
By the way, you want to hear something crazy?
Okay, let's hear it.
So there's an article right here. Baldur's Gate 3 won so many golden joystick awards that Sven Vick can barely hold them all. That's the CEO of Larian. And basically won the record number. It won like 7 awards last night. And it says here, the Game Awards is the next big end-of-the-year video game award show airing December 7th. And PC Gamer publishes... Oh, no, that's not it. Sorry. Baldur's Gate 3 was the clear king of the joysticks. And it's safe to say these 7 awards are just a start. Vic might want to invest in a bag of holding. You see? A bag of holding. It's never going to go away. It's just part of the vernacular.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And people are saying that the thing about turning into undead never actually happened, but I don't know. I talked to someone who said that it happened to them.
I've never heard that.
That's because people don't take turn undead as a feat anymore.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in the old 70s, days when 80s, you automatically got
that's
it.
That's the gazebo joke, which of course never happened with the head of Vecna. Or
I guess they could have been making it up, but I figured no one would admit to it if it wasn't true about them and say it was them.
Never.
So I don't know.
I skimmed from the question. I skimmed the chase examples. Like, there's a bunch of examples of chase obstacles. They look the same to me. Also, the core mechanic looks the same. The 4 degrees of success.
Yeah, it looked the same to me when I looked at it. Mm-hmm. So someone wonders if Wand of Manifold Missiles is around. It is. It's the Wand of Shardstorm now because Force barrages are sharding all over the place. With,
Oh my God,
force.
I ended up not wanting to do a stream because I have such a big schedule of comparing the old names with the new. I realized that stream needs to be with Steve. All of the new names.
I'll do it
all the
with
new
you.
name replacements.
Oh
yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, you should do it together. Bring Steven and not me, because I think that Ronald and I like some of the new names, and Steven sounds like he's traditionalist who likes only the old names. So it'll be more fun if you have a grumpier grognard on there saying that he likes the old
Storm
names.
is a great name. No, it's
We
not.
can give you a soundboard, Steve.
I actually like Manifold Missile better than Shard Storm
it's not,
because
of the way the A and the R go against the S is terrible. I don't
like Shard Storm.
Shard Storm. It's
yeah, that's the
terrible to
the
say.
problem is that
Wrong.
you can also spoonerism it to like Shart Storm,
Right.
which is like
it's not a good. It's
and
a
if you
bad
say
flow.
a Shart Storm would be really gross and something that would be in Shadow of the Demon Lord more so
Shard
than Pathfinder
Storm.
Second.
There's a lot of ways to badly mispronounce that. It's bad. It's bad.
I don't want to get you
mouthfeel.
demonetized, but we all know what players are going to call it
Of
in their
course.
tables.
I know. It's so bad.
Yes.
Manifold Missiles was not great because it was a bit of a mouthful, but at least
I
it
like Manifold
flowed.
Missiles.
I didn't mind it. I actually thought that was fine. No, it's not that I'm wearing nostalgia on my sleeves. It's that there's this thing. Okay, so in advertising, we spend a lot of time on naming conventions, and you name like how to name something, how to say it, how to spell it, how to, is the URL available, blah, blah. There's a lot of, you wouldn't believe how much work goes into names. It's ridiculous. And there's a famous scene in that movie about Nike where, what was that called? With, Air Jordan stuff. And they basically says to the CEO, it's like, why'd you name a Nike? And it's like, well, because the ad guys told us it should be 4 letters and easy to remember. That's it. Like, that's why they named it, which is true. And there's a lot of work that goes into these names, and I'm doing it from my advertising background, is that you need names there's a lot that goes into them, and these names don't feel great in the mouth when you say them, or there's hard consonants or things like that, or it's easy to mispronounce or easy to missay. And again, it's like a lot of these things like Magic Missile. Yes, this alliteration, but it also smooth. Who's also the king of this? Marvel and Stan Lee. Okay, he was the god of naming. He's very good at naming things. Now, he used alliteration all the time, but it worked. So there is a science to naming things, and I feel like a lot of these names, not that they're old, is that they were named very well in the beginning and the first time, and it's hard to undo those names.
I think many of the names were terrible in the first time, but they're old and we know them now and we love them because of tradition and nostalgia.
Oh, I'm not going by
I do agree
at
that
all.
Force Barrage doesn't have a good alliteration. Maybe Force Flurry.
No, Force Barrage is just bad. It's never gonna. I'm never gonna be like, oh, I Force Barrage. No, you don't. A Magic Missile forever. And I mean, at least I would have. I would have done at least alliteration for that one, so that you did a mental image of Magic Missile, Force, whatever. What I can't think of whatever, but or whatever. It's like they're trying to get Force in there, like. Force focus. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up.
So were you upset when I changed the name of Hold Person to Paralyze in PF2?
No, because no one I know
person?
uses it.
So wait, we answered someone in chat who's like, is there one name that Steven is okay with the new name and isn't just didn't just want the original D&D name? And we got it. Hold Person and Paralyze.
I think that was fine.
One where he's
that was
good with the new
welcome.
name.
No, I think
Thank
that's
you,
fine.
Mark.
I think that's fine.
Force Fusillade is
Also,
one from
I'm
Warmonger, but I
glad
think that-
Flesh to Stone is Petrify, because I always read Flesh to Stone and I wonder, I have to
Yes.
pause a moment. Am I looking at the reverse?
Well, that's
I
interesting
like that one, too.
because there is Flesh to Stone and Stone to Flesh, and you do have to take that second because they did do that, which is interesting. So I slightly
Force Fissile.
I do.
Someone said in chat.
I do agree.
I think Fusillade would have been a good single word
Flesh
It's
to
a
Stone
little-
and Stone to Flesh is a
little wordy.
fantastic name. Both those are great names. And I mean, these are, yeah. This
I
happens
think
all the
Petrify
time.
is a good name too.
Petrify is okay, but is it petrifying or does it turn them into stone? I mean, I would
that's-
have called it. I would have
scientific?
called it. You know what?
That's the definition of
No,
petrifying.
I would have called it something like Medusa-ing or something like.
Oh, I see what you're saying because of the scaring being another word for thing that petrify might do, because it both means
Yes.
turning to stone and scaring.
Well, petrified
I see
is
what
like
you're saying.
petrified is like in my mind. You're like, oh, you're so scared you can't move. That's not turning to stone. That's just being scared.
So you could call it like Medusa's wrath.
Yeah, no, that would be interesting because then you would know. Oh, Medusa's turning to stone. See, starting to think like an ad executive. You got to like really think this through, man. You got to
Or
go
like
through.
Gorgon's breath.
That is way better. Gorgon's gaze.
Yeah, well,
That's
yeah.
the new name.
There you go.
That's it.
So-
Everyone use that. I'm using that
Gorgon's
from now.
gaze.
Gorgon's gaze.
Uh-oh.
Way better than Flesh to Stone.
Yeah, I think that is better than Flesh to Stone.
This is a new product idea. Just give better names.
Gorgon's gaze. That's
everything.
way better. That's such
There we
a cool
go.
name.
We found another one where Steven liked a new name better
That
than
I
the original.
invented.
Okay, now we're talking about names. I don't know if I like the name Pathfinder.
You know, the
I
problem
do think
with,
that name is maybe not as descriptive as it could be.
it's
but
not a great name, and the problem is when you type in Pathfinder, a lot of other
Yeah.
things come up.
that's why.
Yeah, that's an
Yeah,
actual
I have a
issue.
Pathfinder Google News alert, and I sometimes get weird
And you got to
results.
write. You got to do like Pathfinder. Like, yeah, Pathfinder has a lot of SEO problems. It actually does. And
Yeah,
in fact, when I did
but the
roll
reason for it is, you guys know, is because it was the Adventure Path company.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it makes
Adventure
sense.
Path became Pathfinder because you find the adventure
Yeah,
path.
and you go
So,
on the
yes.
path. No, it totally makes sense, but you could tell what's done by like advertisers. Look, I'll be the first one to say advertisers don't always give you a lot of things, but when it comes to names and brand recognition, that they're usually pretty good at. Arcane Arrow, that's a good name.
Arcane Arrow is a great name.
That's a great name.
Hey, it's,
The problem is that a
It's
cult
cult
can also
tradition.
use. Yeah, a cult can also
Mark
use
and I are the same.
Yeah, well, it can be arcane with a K. So it's
Yeah.
not
Or you make it so a cult doesn't have it and make a different spell for a cult that's similar.
Oh my God.
Arcane Arrows.
That's such
way
a
better than
non-boomer
Magic.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Just turn the C into a K.
No,
But
it's like
you could
Mortal
do-
Kombat. It's Mortal
You could do
Kombat.
Arcane Arrow and like do a cult Oculus, and a cult Oculus is similar
Yeah.
to Magic Missile,
Colt
but
Oculus.
is a different spell that shoots out like weird force beams from your eye and roughly mechanically similar in
Yeah.
a way that doesn't make a cult people feel sad that they got a cult
Diminutive
Oculus.
darts. It's a little too hard to say, but I like the effort. So
There
by
you
the
go.
way, the other day, while you guys give us some more names,
Or dimension darts.
Dimension
and
darts.
They
That's
kind of warp
pretty
direct.
good. That's
Dimension
pretty
darts,
good.
they warp right to
That's
you,
a
and that's
great name, actually.
and that's why they always hit.
Yeah, because they actually
you
are. The
open up
missiles
little
are
portals
little
and the darts go through them
Yeah,
directly to their
they're
target.
actually force darts, so that would be good.
Pew
Oh,
pew. That
I
has
even like
alliteration.
force darts would even be better. But we were playing in our weekly game mark, and they were guarding this guy who's level 17, and they're fighting the Warsworn, and then he finally gets involved with the fight. He just had everyone else fight. Portal Punch, that's also very good. And he's like, okay, I'm going to attack, and I pull out a dart, and all my players groaned because that was I remember when you were playing D&D First Edition, you look at that table and you look at the weapons, and I was always like, oh, look at the weapons, and the worst weapon on there, the dart. It was like 1d3 or something. It was terrible. Terrible. And
Didn't
I'm
have a great firing rate though in AD&D.
it might have been, but it was so bad. No one, and whenever you said had a dart, it was like a joke because that's what the magic users had to use is darts. And this
Yeah,
guy,
you're a magic user. You're a
this
filthy
guy
magic
was like he's like a big badass head of a crime family, unbelievably powerful, and he pulled out a dart, and they were like, what? And I was hoping he'd hit, but he actually missed all 3 times because I rolled like 3s, but it did a lot of damage when it hit. I was like, well, Oh well, but I did it more for fun. I would just to finally maybe give the dart a little bit of respect, but
There you go.
it failed. Anyhow, look at these people. You guys are
In
coming out with
Pathfinder,
better
you get to add your
names.
full strength, though. So
Yeah.
that's pretty scary. Stronger than more damage than a bow, maybe.
Oh yeah, no, it would have actually. Well, he's level 17. He would have done crazy
I had
damage.
a monk throwing it for a lot of damage. A dart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they can because they're going to add their strength on that.
Yeah, he attacked 3 times and missed 3 times. So I was like,
I just love the fantasy of that person who threw that dart was so strong that it went through his body.
yeah.
Okay, so...
Oh, I want to mention just one thing. I found, I don't know what you can show on screen. If anything, you probably don't have the setup right now, but
I don't really know
I like these little sidebars in the sections. First, this is just so useful for new GMs. I think it's this chapter 1 is running the game.
Yep.
I think a GM could just read through that, and it's the first chapter. Unlike,
we were talking about
Yes,
that
we were talking about it when you were
here. That's exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah. But it has subsections for each of the 3 modes of play. And I just like this. I'm just going to say under exploration, running exploration. I'm just going to read it out if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
It's a little bullet list. GM priorities. The following points will be good to keep in mind to create a fun and smooth experience as your players go about exploring the world. Bullet point. Evoke the setting with vivid sensory details. Shift the passage of time to emphasize tension and uncertainty and speed past uneventful intervals. To get players to add details by asking for their reactions. Present small-scale mysteries to intrigue players and spur investigation. When rolls are needed, look for ways to move the action forward or add interesting wrinkles on a failure. Plan effective transitions to encounters. Anyway, I just think those are all really nice to have as reminders. And different things for there's another list for downtime and another for encounters.
No,
it's hard for me because I usually use Nethys to check to see if things have changed, but Nethys sometimes when it comes to these advice sections, they're not presented in the same order, but I felt like there was something very similar to this.
Maybe I just didn't. I missed it.
See, I did the same thing.
No,
That's what I said.
Maybe that shows the power of layout.
I said the same thing, and Mark disagreed, and now you said it. So 2 against 1. There we go.
What are you talking about?
I didn't know that.
No.
Wait, you didn't say the same thing, Steven.
No, fine. It wasn't exactly the same thing. No, but I felt like this book was very well designed to teach someone how to be a GM and run games. Not that the old
I think
one...
so too.
Okay, I just found it is in the Game Mastery Guide, but I don't know if it had a sidebar. I need my sidebars.
There you go. So it was in there, but not
page 17 of the current.
Page 17. Okay, I thought it was.
Yeah. It's at the beginning of running exploration, but it's just like a bullet list on the first paragraph. It just merges with the rest of the type.
Yeah, Steven, I agree that it's got good stuff, but it's good for new and old GMs alike. And the thing I disagreed with was when you said that more so than in the old days, the new books, including GM Core, spend hundreds and hundreds of pages on basic GMing information.
What are you talking about?
That's what you said.
Yeah, and
I completely
back that up. And you look at the D&D, look at the AD&D.
It only has
rule
58 pages
book.
in the whole first
chapter. I got mine right here. I'm disagreeing.
He's got ammunition.
You have GM Core. Your GM Core came in. It only has 58 pages.
No, I have my Dungeon Master's Guide. The first look. Hello, I'm looking about this.
Okay.
I'm not talking about like...
Okay. You said that the new GM Core had hundreds of pages of basic how to run the game. It has 58.
I meant first edition D&D.
Many of which have actual rules in them and are not advice sections.
D&D. Not first edition Pathfinder I was talking about. I mean, they have like use of miniatures, characters, aging. I mean, it's all these charts determining maximum age, demi-humans, like assassination experience points, damage tables, like how to change alignment languages, player character expenses, arbors. It's just pages and pages of charts, but there's nothing in here like how to run encounters, how to do that. That's what I'm talking about.
I don't disagree that it doesn't have that
first edition AD&D DMG is like not very user friendly at all.
That's what I was talking about, Mark, because that's why I was surprised. I'm talking about what I said. Let me back up. First edition Dungeons and Dragons was nothing but rules, and so was
Agreed.
second. And third is when they started to very slowly explain how to be a dungeon master and actually how to play the game.
I'm almost sure my second edition AD&D
It had
some. It had some.
Wait, it had
some.
very little. And in fact, if you watch, I'm trying to. Oh, it's not here. They said that the 5th edition rules does not start off with how to play and be a good GM. It jumps into like some.
It jumps into like very, very.
No, it's a huge complaint. I
Yeah, it's
did
a
a
huge
rant
complaint.
video yesterday.
It jumps right into the deep end, and it's
the
bad.
deep end of world building.
Right.
And
And honestly,
Yeah.
it's going to lower the sales of the GM Corp because people have low expectations of the Pathfinder GM Corp because of the experience with the 5e one.
No, the 5e one's terrible, and they said that they redid it because it's like the very first thing is like, how do you build the world? I'm like, that is like less than 0.01% of the people give a crap about that. Like, I'm like
I actually like the world building section that is in the 5e DMG, but I think that it being first is very weird.
yeah,
It's a very weird decision, but they're like, because them being like, well, the first thing you have to do before you can do anything else is build a world, and is it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it is. Even if you're not playing pre-published, you might be someone who's more of a bottom-up GM who's like, I don't have a whole world yet. I just kind of know I have this idea for an adventure, and it's a vague setting where I know a little bit about the town that the pieces are going to be in and the dungeon that's near it, but I don't have
these
the world
names
yet.
are so much better. Rod of Cancellation, remember that one? Rod of Lordly Might. Come on, that is such a good name.
Those are great names.
That is such a good name. That is a
I
great.
like both of those names.
Rod of Resurrection, Rod of Rulership, Rod of Smiting. I mean, come
Ronald's
on.
Rod of Rulership.
Staff
Yeah.
of Command, Staff of the Magi, Staff of the Serpent. And look at that picture, man. Look at that picture. It's a staff.
amazing
it's a
how
serpent.
It's
so
amazing how
good.
much that single book established so many iconic
No, I know.
things.
That's what I'm saying. It's
That
amazing.
single book. I mean, which summed up stuff from a few years, but yeah, the deck of many things.
Yep.
Everything.
Oh,
is there.
everything's in this. It's my.
There's-
Hey, a wand of magic missiles. What do you know?
There you go.
They do have a wand of paralyzation, by the way. Wand of polymorphing. Wand of wonder. Best freaking ride.
That is a better name than the Wand of Holding People.
Oh, God, yeah. Bag of beans. Remember the bag of beans? That did not make it. You see, the bag of
There you
beans
go.
did not make it, even though it's an excellent name. But the bag of devouring. Oh, boy.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Right next to the bag of holding. Bag of
So
tricks.
let's go
I
back to
love
the
bag
one
of
that
tricks.
is actually
We are
the
going to
new
review
one.
this book instead.
Why?
Because it's
It's-
awesome.
Objection, relevance.
It's so good. This book is The Bowl of Watery Death. Bracers of Defense. It's amazing how many things are in this book that still exist. It's actually a Cloak of Elven Kind. I mean,
Everyone
this is
should have the
incredible.
1E AD&D DMG. It's
Chime
a
of
great
opening.
historical document.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. I mean, I haven't looked at this, but it's like it's all still here. It's all still here. It's all still being used. Cuba Force. I remember Cuba Force. Keep
I just
going,
realized
Mark.
a lot of new players coming in. I mean,
Many
because
things.
we're in a time where a lot of people are gonna they postpone their transition or checking out of Pathfinder to now because of the books. But a lot of people will get the GM Core book because that's where the magic items are. It's kind of essential. But I do think some people will not read the first chapters, even though they're very helpful, very practical.
Yep.
Even though it's a lot of it's quote unquote soft advice, it's very concrete and specific to running like Pathfinder's rules.
So I'm going to have the different opinion, even though the old Game Mastery Guide had a big problem. And while you were gone, Ronald, it was exactly the story I told that I said I was going to tell, which was it got a name that none of the leads wanted it to have just kind of randomly that was called Game Mastery Basics when it was not the basics. That I think caused a lot of people to skip it. But in GM Core, it's not called that. It's called Running the Game. And in fact, it has crucial rules for running the game that used to be in the core rulebook. So you're used to the world with the core rulebook, Ronald, where you already had what you needed to know to run the game. I think that the new GMs are going to have to read that chapter because there's not a running the game chapter in the core rulebook. But they may skim
difficulty
some of
is-
the sections.
You're right. It does. They may skip some sections, but this is the GM core book is where they need to find how to set the difficulty of an encounter.
So-
and
Yes.
What did
Yeah.
they rename the Pearls of Power?
That was never even in PF2 because they were like an item that was just a spell slot. You can say that we renamed them wands.
What about Portable Holes?
That one, I'm not sure.
didn't
not
that
sure
just
if
double
there-
what Bag of Holding did?
Yeah, it may just not have even come in after that.
What about
But-
Robe of Eyes or a Rope of Climbing? Did they rename those?
Okay. I'm gonna work backwards and skim through GM core and call out names.
No, I'm just because I'm like, I can't believe like every freaking
Steven,
page is filled
We didn't do a going through and looking at what all the names that were changed, so we don't know what
okay,
they
fair
are all
enough.
changed
I'm
to.
sorry. I'm just asking if you knew offhand. I'm not asking. I thought, well, Mark is a super genius with the photographic memory, so I thought you would have known.
I don't have a photographic memory.
I have Vecna. Is Vecna in here? That I'm joking.
Obviously not. It
I
wasn't.
know. They
Some
would
of
never
these weren't
do that.
in PF2 to begin with.
I know.
So, you know what? We made people wait because there are already over 150 likes. So, just maybe it
Uh-oh.
will help us get back to the GM core after this happens. But let's divert to Ronald's song. So, what are you going to sing for us?
What have you
Ronald?
been? What is the ask? What are we doing?
I have no idea. Rod is
Well, you said-
seven
you
points?
said-
Sing something?
I love
You
it.
said you were going to
Seven
sing something.
Oh, you were
I
gonna
did
do
not
so.
say that.
Oh, I thought you did.
That's on Mark. Don't blame
I
me
was
anymore.
joking about it.
He
Oh,
was
you were joking. You were
Don't take
joking
me
about it?
literally.
I thought
Okay,
I thought you wanted to. I was like, no, you don't have to if you don't want. And you're like, well, no, I'm going to do it, even though
Oh.
it strains me, and that'll get more people to do
I'm
it.
not a singer. Some people said I could rap, and
I mean,
I
you
like
have,
big books,
you have
and I
rap.
cannot lie. There you go.
Yeah, good enough.
There you go. We got a rap. That was about as much as we got when Theo did Les Mis, and then his phone went off after like 6 words.
That's right.
So it worked out. There you go. You got a rap from Rules Lawyer, everybody.
And I admit I also thought of some lyrics right now.
Okay.
I'd like to teach the world to play a game. Oh, wait, no, sorry. A game that's not D&D. I'm ruining it.
That's
but-
good enough. You win. You're good enough.
No,
I
I
had a
get what
good
you're
rhyme
saying.
there.
Okay,
Also, if you
about it.
say a game that's not 5e, I think that fits the meter.
It's called Pathfinder 2E, and the rules are free. There you go.
There you go.
You got it. You got Rules Lawyer.
I sang. There you go.
It's a jingle for you from Rules Lawyer. So here's my my interesting take. I guess I'm not saying that this was a problem that's in here, but I actually was a little surprised. I thought they wouldn't put alchemical items yet, and might put them with the alchemist. That would to allow themselves the maximum amount of time to not have to make any decisions until the alchemist was about to come out. So they've locked themselves into kind of keeping the alchemical items basically the same because they're in here and they are basically they look pretty similar to what they were before.
Is it the
Obviously,
same
there
or
might
is
have
it a
been some
shortened?
changes. Oh, it's a shortened list.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't have all of them. So that also means anything that wasn't in there might be different than it was before. But the ones that are in here are very similar to the way that they were before. And so that I thought maybe they would just hold them all back so that they can control the vertical and the horizontal on the alchemist class. But at this point, they did not do that, and it looks like things are more or less similar to how they were, which does make it much more compatible with the old alchemical items as well. That would have been the problem if they completely changed them, and then it's like, well, but I've got these bombs from before, and bombs now don't even work the same way. What do I do? So I do see why they might have done that.
I assume you've talked about the shield runes.
We have not. We talked about them a little bit in the first stream, but I was planning on talking about that next.
So go ahead.
You did a perfect transition. So yeah, they've got shield runes now. So it's actually very difficult to put in something that is a progression for shields without completely redoing the economy of the game. It was easy for me when I did monster parts because we completely redid the economy of the game. So we could create a progression for shields that just automatically happened when you leveled up the shield. There are a lot of pitfalls that a shield rune might have fallen into. And thanks to some clever design, the shield rune managed to avoid almost all of those. So now almost all the pitfalls are avoided. There's only a few items that now fall into any pitfalls, and you can probably come up with a way to handle those. Unfortunately, one of those items is in the GM core. But here's what they did, and here's why it's great. Here's why it's brilliant. So the main problem you might have had with if you just didn't think about this and didn't think about the pitfalls, is you might say, okay, well, just like striking and potency, I'll make a reinforcing rune. So they did do that. And it'll give you more hardness and hit points as you take more higher ranks in it. If that was all you did, you would have a big problem, which is that the amount of hardness that you actually need to gain for a basic shield depends on the shield. And in some cases, the amount that a shield was behind a sturdy shield, if you consider that's the maximum anything will ever reach, was a very small amount. And so therefore, if you only made a rune that just increased hardness by 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5 or something like that, you might only need the really low level one that costs basically nothing to get up to where you want to be. That would have been a problem. So Paizo was very smart, and they put in a maximum hardness and hit points that you can get with the reinforcing rune. Now, that maximum hardness and hit points is equal to the sturdy rune, which is it's a sturdy shield, which actually is where they're going to get into trouble in the corner cases later. Perhaps it's an easy fix to make that maximum go down by a little bit, and that will save the corner cases, and it almost never comes up because of another very smart thing they did. Because here's the other problem. The other problem is that many shields that already exist already have been scaled a lot from where they already were. They're supposed to be partially progressed, just maybe not to the full extent of a sturdy shield, right? So what if you have a shield that already was nearly as much as the sturdy shield, and then you throw on a rune that adds a bunch more hardness? It's already going to get to the sturdy shield really easily. So Paizo did something really smart. All of the shields that are in here pretty much are the old shields you remember from the game, or not the Game Master Guide, it was in the core rulebook before, or Advanced Player's Guide, but they have the reinforcing rune built into the specific shield already, like a striking and potency rune would be built into your specific weapon. That's brilliant. That's good. That means it already has that built into how its hardness was raised, so you don't get a ton more hardness suddenly by throwing a reinforcing rune into it. You only get a little more, whatever the next reinforcing rune would give you. That's great.
Doesn't that make it uniform with how our specific armors were working?
It makes it very similar to specific armors, specific weapons, and it's great. So that's excellent. So where is the one little place that you're going to have some issues? So first of all, let's talk about why this change is good and why it's even in here. Why the overall idea of finding a way to decouple and make into a rune progression is good. The problem was twofold. One, your old shield didn't scale, and it just became worthless unless it had a scaling version that would raise its hardness. Now, redoing the entire economy, like with monster parts, I could put in auto scaling. That's fine, but you can't do that with every shield in the system. You're not going to have 7 versions. So having a rune that could do the scaling for you, excellent. It lets you use your favorite old shield from before. Problem number 2 is that sturdy shields, in a lot of levels where there was no other shields that were just slightly behind sturdy shields were one of the only shields that a block happy person would want to use. The other one was indestructible shield, if you could get it, because it was rare. Because even though it only blocked for a little over 2/3 as much as the sturdy shield, it is invincible, and you can block an infinite number of times. And if you're a fighter with the 20th level feat, you can block basically everything, because you can block once on every creature's turn plus 2 additional times. And if you're getting hit more often than once on every creature's turn plus 2 additional times per round, then you have other problems. And so indestructible was probably still better than sturdy, even though it blocked for 13 instead of 20, because of the fact you never had to stop blocking, especially if you had extra shield blocks. But it depended on your situation. People complained online being like, if I love blocking, my only choices are sturdy or indestructible. So now that you can raise up the other shields, hopefully it would give you more options, so that there are other options now that can compete with sturdy. And that's true. Unfortunately, because of the fact that indestructible is an adamantine shield, the adamantine special material tripped them up a little bit. It now is much more powerful than it was before. And now, instead of sturdy and indestructible being the only options, if you could get indestructible, which is rare, indestructible is the only option. And now there are fewer options than before for someone who really wants to make sure they're good at blocking. This is because, due to some vagaries of the prices of the runes, an indestructible shield with the last reinforcing rune costs barely more than a sturdy shield of the same level as the reinforcing rune. It's like just like 10% more. It's basically the same cost. And it is completely as defended as the sturdy shield and is indestructible. You just have it all. It's vastly stronger than any shield that existed before the remaster. And if your GM will allow you to have an indestructible shield, which is rare, there's mostly no reason to use any other shield unless they create new shields that are so ridiculously strong that they can compete with that, in which case there's a new category of Uber shield that goes into. Fortunately, because they did the hard work of doing really, really smart things for the overall design of this rune, it's ridiculously easy to fix this. All that you have to do is lower the maximum that is given by the reinforcing rune to be much lower than it currently is. Because if it's not an adamantine shield, it's not going to run into these problems. Steel shields, most of the other materials, when you add the highest grade reinforcing rune, it's going to put them up to, let me do the math for you. It'll put them up to like 12 or 13, which is where the indestructible shield was before and was in a good place with the sturdy shield, right? But the problem is that an adamantine high-grade shield already has 13 hardness, which means that when you add 7 hardness to it, it's going to have 20, which is the maximum of a sturdy shield. It also means that it's going to wind up with, even at lower levels than that, it's going to wind up with the reinforcing rune putting it right at the sturdy shield of its level. So if you lower the maximums, it won't affect those other cool shields that you like. Like if you look at any of the other specific shields in here, like floating shield or force shield, forge warden, or lion shield. The lion shield is a steel shield. It has hardness 6. Which actually, do steel shields just flat out have hardness 6 now instead of 5 in the core rulebook? I think I missed that.
It's unchanged. Hardness
they've always had hardness 6?
Steel shield?
No, they had 5. Okay, so the lion shield has 6, and so does Spellguard shield. A lot of these shields say that it says steel shield parentheses hardness 6, which makes me think that when this was being written, that they were deciding whether to make steel shields go up to 6 or not, because a lot of them say steel shield and then parentheses 6, maybe not. Either way, 6 or 5, it doesn't matter. When you add 7 to that, you'll get 12 or 13, which is like a great number to compare to 20 when you have a powerful ability like Indestructible is. It's not going to be as good as 20. Even you could make it be higher than that, maybe, arguably, right? If it had a weaker power, it could go higher than 13, perhaps. But those other ones were never going to go above 13. So if you lowered the maximum on Reinforcing Rune, it won't affect that. It only affects Adamantine shields. So this is such a good addition to allowing you to scale, and it only is tripped up on this one rare material that you can easily fix by lowering the max. That's my thought anyway. And it could have fallen into 3 big pitfalls that would have just completely caused problems if you did a more naive design, but because of extremely strong technical skill on this design, it avoided all of those. I don't know. What do you guys think, Ronald and Stephen?
I didn't fully follow what the pitfall was. I'm just looking at
Oh, the pitfall right now is that the reinforcing runes give too high of a maximum to. So, assuming that the goal of them, which has been stated
They
before,
range between 3 at the lowest to 7.
Yeah, so they range between
Increases
3 and
to
7.
the hardness.
Bingo.
Okay.
So, assuming that the goal is twofold, which is to make it so that your weaker or your shields that don't have as much hardness can scale and be usable at a higher level, and that it increases the number of shields that are usable for a blocking person from before when it was just sturdy and indestructible if you had it. Right now, it's good at making the shields go to higher levels. It can increase it by 7. It maybe even could have been more than 7 at the highest level, perhaps, if the maximum was lower, because 5 or 6 can go up to 12 or 13, depending on whether a steel shield is in fact supposed to be 5 or supposed to be 6. Most shields are probably steel, or they might not be, but many of them are. So if your shield is steel, the most it's ever going to get from this is 12 or 13. The pitfall is that adamantine starts at 13. And because of the fact that the maximum always gets you all the way into the sturdy shield, in many cases, the only example of which is the indestructible shield, because it's the only adamantine shield in the GM core, but this will happen anytime a specific adamantine shield is created. In most cases, an adamantine shield that's being given a reinforcing rune will cost basically the same price as the sturdy shield, while also having a bunch of other stuff. In this case, the invulnerable shield is, so a sturdy shield, the greatest version, is the same as it was in PF2 original, 40,000 gold. A indestructible shield with the highest version of, so first of all, an indestructible shield now has already gone up to 17 because of all the things I mentioned of adamantine starting high. It was 13 before. That's because it has a greater reinforcing rune in it, which it should have. But this means for 24,000, you have something with almost the same hardness. It costs way less, and it's indestructible. But if you're like, but wait, that's already not enough, which is already probably enough to make it just drastically better than the higher level sturdy shield. If you pay for a supreme reinforcing rune, that will put your cost up higher. It is higher at that point. You will be paying 56. It's a little bit more than, but it's not like a full item level more. And you will now have an indestructible shield that is completely has the hardness, hit points, and break threshold of the sturdy shield. It's sort of like the uber amalgamation between both of the two best shields from before the GM core. So I think that the fix to that is just simply if the reinforcing runes had a lower maximum, which doesn't affect the steel shield, it doesn't affect Dawn Silver, it doesn't affect any other material. They could even give a bigger boost to them.
Yeah, but maybe it's not an issue. Like someone put all that money into their indestructible super uber shield. So
I think it's an issue because it doesn't solve the case where there was only one true shield. And the runes were meant to solve the case where there was one true shield. It actually exacerbates it because the indestructible shield is even more the one true
By the way,
shield.
that's a great name.
I see.
Super Uber Shield.
Super Uber shield.
Good job. I like that one.
I don't know. It seems mighty expensive to me, but
I don't know. Like shields are
Even
always...
if you pay for the lower cost, it's way better than the top rank sturdy shield. The 17 block that's invincible costs like 24 out of 40. It's only a little more than half as much. And 17 that you can use any number of times is way better than 20.
I see. The indestructible next to the supreme sturdy shield. Okay.
Yes. And you can make an indestructible that has all the stats of the supreme sturdy shield plus is indestructible for almost no, like at that level, like the cost increase is mostly irrelevant. Partially, the only reason for that is that the runes cost less than the sturdy shield that they're based on, and it starts at as a lower level item. Actually, wait, sorry, when I said 56, that was wrong because I double paid for the reinforcing rune. I was like, wait a minute, that's more than a 10% increase, and I calculated this out before. So in fact, it's not 56. You are taking your indestructible shield and you are paying 24,000, so it's 46. So instead of 40, you're only paying 6,000 to make it indestructible. It's clearly, if your GM allows you to have this rare item, drastically stronger for almost no increase in cost.
But it's rare, right?
Yeah, but that's not what rarity is supposed to be for normally. So I think that it's just purely a brilliant design. It avoids all the hard pitfalls that would be difficult to change or fix. And since 90% of the materials will never get up to the value of 20, so it is literally impossible for a steel shield item to have this thing that with indestructible shield, because it will always be lower, even with a +7. Even if you change it to a +9 on the highest one, a steel shield would never have this. The problem is when you start with a material that's high, it will quickly hit the cap.
Okay.
And it can wind up just eclipsing out, which indestructible does. So by lowering the cap to an amount that's still higher than steel would have, they would be in perfect shape for this one niche thing that I found. And I feel like because you guys wanted to hear my explanation more, I talked about this more than it even deserves to be talked about, because it's a corner case situation with just this one material that's not even a common material. And this is overall a brilliant innovation for runes that is going to do great for shields overall. And if you just make sure you don't give out the indestructible, or that you lower the max, like I was saying, suddenly it opens up the wild west of
too much in shields. We're done.
Let's go somewhere else.
Shields have been covered.
I agree. But I knew that people were going to want to talk about it for a while.
No, you wanted to talk about it for a while.
I wanted to understand.
No, you can understand.
I think Ronald and I wanted to talk about it, but Steven wants to go back to reading the Dungeon Master Guide.
Reading names for the Dungeon Master Guide.
What I can't believe. This book is from 1977, and like everything in this book, it's still being used. I mean, that is incredible. I mean, it really is mind-boggling. And
it's more flavorful than a lot of modern descriptions.
No, this is incredible. Now I remember why this game was played by everyone I knew, because this silly little book is better than all these others, and so in many ways, not design. It's kind of stunning. I was like kind of mesmerized. I'm going to reread this tonight. I can't believe how good this book is.
Someone in the comment.
Mind-boggling.
We're off the shields. Never mind.
Oh, you can. What was the comment? You can do it.
Someone suggests just removing the sturdy shields, and I don't. But
I don't think that helps you at all, because in this case, it even more puts the pressure on adamantine as a special material, because at that point, the highest you can get without adamantine is way lower than the amount that adamantine can give. And since
at
it's
high
not
levels, people will craft.
That's actually
and get adamantine.
Correct. And but it's an uncommon material, so it also means the power difference between a GM who's just like, oh, sure, you found adamantine, and a GM's like, I've heard online that this is a lot, so I'm just not going to give you
adamantine. I heard from Mark Seifter.
I'm not going to give it to you ever. is drastic. It's drastic. It's 50% more blocking ability. So I think it would actually make matters much worse to keep the reinforcing as was with adamantine and remove sturdy shields entirely. The point is not that the indestructible is an issue because you compare it to the sturdy shield and they're like, what's going on, sturdy shield? The problem is when you compare it to every other shield as well and the sturdy shield. Whereas the sturdy shield, I think there's a lot more shields that are competitive with it. But let's move off of shields, because it's cool, is one of the big changes, but there's a lot more in this book than that. And there's fun things like I was talking about before with the shockwave rune. And did you catch any other brand new items that you thought were really cool, either of you, when it came to these items?
My problem is that I've not looked at Treasure Trove and some other books thoroughly, so I don't know what's newly cool.
Yeah, I don't know what's new either.
Hey, I see that there's a Medusa armor.
Yeah, I think that may have been in there before. But I think
black hole armor.
That was in the treasure vault.
I know, because I made fun of that's the worst art in history.
Eternal Eruption, I think, is new. It's a held item, which is like a eternal eruption of frozen lava that shoots out a lava bomb. And then it's the different variants, which I really love, are Eternal Eruption of, and then it has the name of a different mountain that's from Golarion.
That's cool. That's pretty cool. Bloodseeker beaks. That was in here already. I'm trying to see. Problem is just like I just don't remember what used to be in here. It's just like there's just too many.
This is
things.
not new, but it was in the Game Mastery Guide. But included in the equipment section are the intelligent items, cursed items, relics, artifacts. It's been combined.
Yeah,
that's what used to be in the core rule book.
Yeah,
I think quirks are gone now too, which used to be with those.
Oh, really?
Alas,
they were a fun table that Luis Loza wrote for us for the Game Mastery Guide.
I did look at the intelligent items, but it's only one page. Well, it's 2 pages. 2 pages, and that's it. And then the cursed items, Bag of Weasels, one of my favorites.
Bag of Weasels is awesome. And that's a Jason Bowman original for like a stream. And then Eleanor Farron wrote it up to go in the Cursed Items.
Oh, I thought that was like some classic item that went back into D&D history.
No, Jason Bowman wrote it for a stream.
Oh.
As a gag, and Eleanor Farron was doing the Cursed Items. Like, I want to just put in the Bag of Weasels.
Well, there's
and she did.
There's the other one, the Bag of
Tricks.
Is that the one? Yeah, Bag of Tricks is kind of like a bag of Bag of Tricks is kind of like Bag of Weasels.
Dustin points out all the artifacts have flavorful ability names. That's true for all the activations, and I love the new activations having names like Sacred Seeds or like whatever they're all going to be called. Those are fantastic, and it feels good to use them because you can call it out. It's like I will use my Essence Transmogrification or my Grace of the Inheritor.
A Bag of Weasels is probably some of the best.
Head Wrap of Wisdom has 2 actions. One is called Consider the Consequences, and then the reaction, Reclaim Your Mind.
See, here's a good example. The names of the actions for Pathfinder and the names of the feats are some of the best in TTRPGs. So why are these renames so bad?
I like the renames too, a lot of them. I think it's because you have nostalgia for the original.
Wrong. Not nostalgia. In fact, we could do a blind study. We could actually have people who don't play the games and have like, okay, which name do you like more? And I bet you we would have more people who like the originals because they just flow and sound better.
I'd be very, very curious.
Some do, others don't.
Yes. I think that you would have mixed results. I think you would have mixed results where if you did this on spell names, I think mostly the new names would do well, but some of the old names would do
Cuisine,
well.
That's an A+.
That's great. I love Cleanse Cuisine.
Plus. That's a great name. I love that one.
Yep.
You're not going to like this one, Steve. Staff of Arcane Might.
What was that?
That's for the Staff of Power, I believe. This is the one that you sunder it, you destroy it, and
terrible.
Yeah.
Derek and I would have a lot of fun with this. I think he'd agree with me on all these names.
I don't know. I think Staff of Arcane Might is okay, although I really like Staff of Power just because power.
See?
I told you there's some that I like the original too. There's some that I like the original, but the new ones I mostly like better.
Staff of Infinite Power.
I mean, Steven, because you were skeptical, I picked the new names and like the names on abilities and all the new names for things as one of my favorite changes because there's so many that are cool. That doesn't mean that there aren't a few that I'm going to miss.
I'm looking at the staves now, and they're not keyed by schools now. So that's
the schools are gone, so they can't be keyed by schools.
Yeah,
there are no more schools anymore. But there are some that are basically the school ones. They just have a different name, right? Like Staff of Control is basically in a very enchantment-y thing.
Some of these are still the same from before. Staff of Animal Staff, Mentalist Staff.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's much redesign. It looks like they've been given different names.
I'm wondering, is this something I missed in the original Staff of Enchantment or not?
I'm being reminded in chat that we did have a thread voting on the new and old names from when they put out that core Pathfinder Remaster core preview.
It was.
Yeah, I had talked about having a stream going over the survey results, but I think something actually more live
See,
react
I would
would be
you see,
better.
I would not do it. You see, I wouldn't do it on anyone who has TTRPG experience. You do it with people who've never played.
Yeah, I think that's the true study.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
people have
that's how
never
you do
even
it.
seen it.
Right.
Because some people like the nostalgia
That's
names.
right. No,
But I even think that the one that you
That would
did,
be
though,
interesting to stream,
that's
actually.
what I just said.
Yeah.
I said that's how you get the real.
I'm agreeing
yeah,
with
hold on,
you.
hold
Oh,
on.
I know,
Hold
no,
on.
but I
You don't
didn't
want me
say
to
that.
agree with you?
No, but I said that. I said if you missed me already saying that.
Steven,
Yes.
let's do it. Let's get a non-gamer. Like, I could try to get, like, I don't
No,
know,
no,
one
no,
of my
it's not
parents
one
who doesn't
person.
know anything
Oh.
about it. Yeah, but it would just be funny to bring them on a stream and just be like,
That
which of
actually
these
would be
names do
pretty
you
funny.
like?
That actually would be pretty
Which
funny.
of these names do you like, Mark's dad? And then he's like, I don't know, or whatever he says. Like,
No, I have a lot
that'd
of
be
friends
silly.
that are non-gamers. I could easily.
You
I
could
my
get one of your
brother.
friends in there.
I get
That'd
my
be
brother
easier.
on there.
Yeah, your brother, you should get your brother. What is the Hollywood costume designer's opinion? Because aesthetics are like, his job is to have the perfect matching
That
aesthetics.
is
So
completely true. Or I get someone from advertising. That's actually be fascinating.
that would be also amazing. So
Yeah.
I still think that whatever Ronald has, which is from gamers, is useful in a different way, but it's not as good as the test from people who've never played. But going through Ronald's results with Steven and Ronald to be like whether they agree with their own results or not in a stream, I would be amused by that.
So,
With Steven
in
be like,
fact,
come on, you guys,
I
90%
will
said
say
that they
that
like this new one.
I will say one of the main reasons that Ronald the Rules Lawyer is so popular because your naming is excellent. The bad thing is the rules lawyer is a little too generic, and that's hard. But you got Ronald the Rules Lawyer. See how that smoothly comes off your tongue? It's very easy to say. It's evocative. It comes up with a lot of imagery of what that can mean. It's A+. See, that's
It's just
a good
so
name.
hilarious that I
Have you
know
seen my
too.
video, Ronald's Rules of Rolling?
No, you see, that's a
Oh,
good.
that's a
you
great
see,
name.
That's a great name.
That comes from my middle school class.
Yeah.
I had these rules that all of the GMs running their tables, middle schoolers
I'll
with
give you
middle schoolers who
I'm
were
gonna-
trying to cheat, that they could invoke.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna give
I
you.
heard them yelling to their groups. That violates Ronald's Rules of Rolling.
All right.
That's awesome.
Names. I'll tell you how important names are. Before the pandemic, there was the two most popular video streaming services. Okay, and these were very popular. And the reason why these are more popular than because things like Skype and Discord and all that, I won't get into it, but they were based on very old technology. And there was two that were built from the ground up, and that's why they were so successful and sort of took over. There was something called Zoom, which I think you've heard of, and there was one that was actually superior in every way, and it was called Blue Jeans. That was the name of the streaming service. Have any of you ever heard of the streaming platform Blue Jeans, or did you ever use it?
I have not heard of
I used it to make a court appearance.
There you go.
Oh,
You see,
Was it
But that was
superior
the
in
only
every way?
context.
back then it was. I mean, now it's the after pandemic.
Betamax was a bad name, by the way.
Exactly. Right.
yeah.
And the thing is, I remember like Blue Jeans. What a terrible, terrible name. Or Zoom. The rest is history as to which one that wore. And
You're right about that.
They came right, but that's why naming does matter, man.
No, naming is important.
Yeah.
True names are magical. Dustin from Paizo in the chat said, get a fantasy author who's never played a TTRPG before, but does other fantasy naming things to be your person. That would be another interesting choice of someone. So we did have a question from chat that is sent it a few times being like, what do you think about the new reposition and swap
Oh, I saw
action?
that. Swap
Yeah.
is fantastic because
I like it.
Yeah, swap was one of those.
I've said
Why
that
didn't
every
they have
time.
that before? Type thing.
Yeah.
I think that legitimately, and I've said this before, while it's less simulationist, just having loadouts be almost like, I don't want to use stance because that is a trait for a different type of feat, but like a fighting style thing that you can just swap for an action between whether you're using a sword and shield or a two-handed or two-weapon. And each of those has its own benefits. And I don't care if you have 8 arms or you have 50 tentacles or whatever, you're in one of those because it's a game state. And we're not going for simulation. And it's one action to swap. And you can swap everything you need for the new one whenever you swap it. but then you can't do the things that are only available in the other stats. So you can't be like, oh yeah, my character is carrying a two-ended weapon and a longbow and also a shield, and it's two-weapon fighting with the two-ended weapon and the longbow while raising the shield, because the game would prevent it due to a kind of gamist approach. And that would be like an ideal thing for me to have in a game. And there are some games that do. And they always have a swap feature like this. And I like the swap action as well.
I called it the Baldur's Gate 3 action.
So, I mean, I think Reposition, that might be the most powerful ability in the game right now. I use that a lot. I use Reposition.
I think it's one of the most underrated at the very least.
Incredibly,
it's very strong, and people don't value it for
I
as
use
much
it all
as
the time, and it's ridiculous.
Do you know, Mark, whether it was ever considered in the early days and not included?
I mean, it just wasn't in there before because, like, we talked about it because it was in the Advanced Player's Guide in PF1 and decided that we weren't going to include it. That was just kind of, no one like was really pushing for it, but
okay,
no one was like, no, it has to be in there. I was like, we could put it in, and people were like, nah. And I was like, all right. And that was just basically it, right? But when you have different designers, if you have at least a few people who are really passionate about adding Reposition, then maybe that gets it. It depends on who wants to spend capital to like be like, no, I really want Reposition in the game. And repositioning and moving things around is very strong, but as Steven says, it's strong, but I think it's also very underrated because people don't recognize the value.
I love the critical failure effect that your target can reposition you.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, because many times I'll play games, and my players know this now, because you can use the shove, or it's like where you force move, monster force moves someone.
Yeah,
it's a shove.
Yeah, shove is the regular action. I think monsters have like push
or see. But my point is what they would do is a lot of times our characters, the PCs, will spend a lot of time and energy to put themselves exactly where they want to be, and then I'll be like, I shove you, and I go into your space. They're like, no, it like messes up there, that messes everything up, and then it messes up multiple characters, and it can be very powerful, especially if they're trying to block you from like getting somewhere as a monster. So it's whenever I do it, the PCs always moan. They're like, oh, don't do that. I'm like, that shows me it's working.
It's funny because the PCs moan when it happens to them, but then few PCs actually engage in it. Because whenever I've seen it be used, it was always really, really, really powerful. But
they'd rather do damage. That's why. What are you going to say, Ronald?
Oh, I was unhappy to see the player core weapons don't have. I thought there would be some weapons with it as a trait. You know,
a reposition trait for like a hook that like hooks onto them, and
that's not a bad idea. I think it's too strong.
Yeah,
I think that's way too strong.
They did this quickly. I thought it would have been cool. It'd be cool to have a reach weapon doing that too.
Yeah,
you just move them around. It's like you could put on like a bill hook and you're just like hooking onto them, and
but then you can't use the reach weapon. It's sort of a counterintuitive. It's like I pull you in. No crap. Now I get back up.
Or no, you pull them to the side.
Oh
with
yeah,
the
side
weapon.
would work good. Yeah, that would work well.
Pull them around the corner so they can no longer see you and they have to move back.
We need a new athletics action where you grab onto them and spin them around, gain momentum like.
The whirling throw feat for monks.
I was about to say, we have that. It's called whirling throw, and our guys use that all the time. They pick up creatures and throw them
for its level
constantly. And they have what is it, Titan Wrestler? They use that too.
Someone points out polearms can do it as a crit spec.
It is the polearm crit spec already. Yeah. That's correct. When I was writing those crit specs originally in the core rulebook, I was like, the same thing that you just talked about, Ronald, in the visual, I was repositioning them with a polearm. So I put it into the critical specialization.
Now I've got the author here.
Well, that's interesting. So how many of how much of the remastered core rulebooks will be reprinted a third time into Starfinder 2 ebooks? That is
we don't know.
Well, what's interesting? That's a chance for them to yet again iterate on some of these rules because
I don't think they will. I don't think they're going to change things that I think they're going to want it to be parallel.
I agree that it should be pretty much identical, and the only things they need to do is add things to make it Starfinder-y, like with maybe grenades or flying and stuff like that. Like maybe adjust
add
that.
necessary changes for the setting and game differences, but not just add something where they're like,
I could see
change the way shove works. Why? Is it for Starfinder? No, we just did it.
I know, but
they're not going to do that.
They shouldn't, but I could see the temptation. I could see
it's always tempting.
Oh, it's extremely tempting, but they shouldn't. And what they should do is have literally the rules identical, exactly the same, and they only put in the Starfinder specific rules, and that's it. And nothing else changes.
Stephen, you're 100% right. I'm a game designer. I know how tempting it is to change the rules. Game designers always tinkering. Like, it's funny because people were always asking like when do you start thinking about like what you would change if you made a new edition of a game? And the answer is before the game even released.
Yeah.
The moment we send it to the printers, I think the day we send
you probably have Plan Bs that are on the cutting room floor, right?
Well, first of all, and second of all, the day we sent it to the printers, like later that day after celebrating, Logan and I had a conversation. We're like, this was really a good idea. Oops. Well, there you go.
I've been in this situation so many times.
DCs.
Do you get a sense of anxiety looking at something after it's out in the world because you might see something you wish you would have changed?
Oh God, yeah.
It's like a fear of looking at it after it's gone out.
I have my books all the time, and I'm like, I actually don't want to look at them because I might see something, and I'm like, I skim them fast because I'm like, it's already been printed. I don't want to find something.
Yeah, you don't want to read it.
No, I don't.
No one is more upset about that one typo that made it into the book than than most of the people who work on those books, who are the anxious types like me, who have there's some people
that actually
who are
leads into
zen.
something I want to ask. It's like a perfect transition, but I want to point out my time limit is we're going over. We should get into the hot take phase. Like, I would like to hear from Chad or other people, like anything you want to ask me or anyone here. But I had two questions, actually. One of them, and it came up in my video today in the comments, like people saying, oh, no, because I point out another editing oversight. Currently, the Bard composition spells do not say visual or auditory. So I pointed out some issues in my video today about that. But some commenters were like, this was a rush job, blah, 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 and upset. And I'm wondering, what was the turnaround time? Like, didn't they decide the stuff in January that they're going to do the remaster?
No.
And when would they have had to finish the PDFs? Like, they had a little time, didn't they?
I know.
They couldn't have possibly decided it. And in fact, even I think I saw a tweet today from Jason Bowman being like, showing an Andor GIF that he said that he had posted from a recent episode of Andor in January when the decision was made. So that pretty much solidifies it. I mean, I wasn't there. I was at Roll for Combat already, but they clearly did it in response to the OGL, which means that this is a Herculean effort, and or Herculean. I know that both of those pronunciations are accepted. To get it done that quick, it's a tour de force. And a rush job is a negative way that you can put it, but another way to put it is it's an amazing achievement to get it done that quickly. And it was always going to have some errors in a product of that size. Even if they had twice as much time, I would have expected it to have some errors.
And how much time was it? That was my question.
I know. You want me to answer?
Yeah.
So it was right after the OGL, when they were starting to think about it. So that's like end of January.
Yeah.
And then they announced it. I found out about it, obviously, because we had Eric on our show a few weeks before the announcement at Gamma. So Gamma was in April. So I found out the end of March. Both Mark and I found out. And then I arranged to have Eric on the show so we can discuss it as it was announced. So we did that. And the books themselves, because I know how the print cycle works, the books had to be done by June, the latest.
Yeah.
So June early June. So
that means they did it within 4 to 5 months, probably more like 4.
And
a lot of that
February,
time,
March, April, May.
That's so good.
and it wasn't just editing. There's game design.
It wasn't just editing; it was
Yeah, no,
everything.
it wasn't.
It was layout, and this is both GM core and PC core. Both of those.
It's both of those books. No, I will call this out again, which I have before on one of our streams, which is if you look in the credits in the front of these books, they list a remastered development team, which includes people who aren't even on the rules and lore team, including Dustin, who's here in the chat right now and wrote, "There was so much layout work," as one of the most recent chats. There are people from other teams who clearly were brought on to assist with this process to make sure it could happen, which just shows like the team effort. And it was not just like the usual suspects who you would think. It looks like it was an all hands on deck experience where they brought in some of like powerhouses from the Starfinder team as well to help with the remaster. So it's clear how hard Paizo worked and how much amazing effort was put into getting these done in that period of time, because that is very fast.
Yeah, and of course the OGL situation meant they couldn't really do a huge more print runs of the current rule books. They needed to get something out.
Well, I know what happened with that too. I know all these stories. Is that that after the OGL, right, and they ran out of the 4th printing they announced that in 2 weeks. They actually ran out faster. It was more like a week, but it was announced in 2 weeks. So,
well, I think they ran out in a week, but there were still a few circulating around in other places.
Yeah, they ran out in a week, and then and then the distribution houses ran out in 2, and then it was gone. And then they literally just called up Region, said, "How much paper do you have?" And they said, "We have X amount," and they're like, "We need all of it and print that many books," and that's what happened. And they did. And they printed that many. Whatever they had, they printed. Because it takes a while to get the paper in. And so they did that as quickly as possible. And then I think they realized, well, it's time for... Yeah, it was the 4th printing. It was the same printing. They didn't bother changing anything. They just reprinted it with whatever paper they had in stock.
Right.
And then they must have realized, I mean, I was talking to Eric a lot at the time, that they just had to move off of it. And I think this is something they always wanted to do, but there was never a good reason. And it's like, it's one of those, do we really need to add hundreds of thousands of extra hours of work just to do this? You know, because look how big it was. And just like, there's never a good time to do it until you're forced to. And they kind of were forced to.
So since Ronald has to leave, what was your last question? Because you said you have one more.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I realized I have 2 more.
Okay. Well, you know what?
We don't have a time limit, so it's up to you.
For it.
I'm the person who's like cutting myself off, so I'm just going to go ahead. I'll just say them both. One is since there's been a lot of work done by content creators to like find all of the little differences between previous versions of class feats and current. Is it something that maybe Paizo could do to just put out? I mean, when they errata their game, they put out a document that everybody can. A change log. Is that something that could possibly happen? Because that seems like it would be useful. My other question was, is there a reason we haven't seen hyperlink PDFs?
So those are interesting questions. So for the first one, I would be shocked if they didn't put out at least a simple conversion guide that had the big things that you need to look out for, because that's just Paizo and and WotC for that matter have always done that when there's a nearly compatible situation and some of the names and other things got changed. Whether it's going to be a full change log of everything or not, I'm not sure. I'd be very happy if it was, but I'm not sure. That would be helpful to every home GM who is going to try to run things from some of the old books, which are fantastic books and should still be usable, but knowing what changed is really important and helpful for that.
It's not the big changes that lead to hiccups. It's the small
little ones.
Yeah. Like if like one GM will, assume a spell works the way it did in 2019, but then the deletion of a word, and that player only knows the new version, will cause a hiccup. That would just be really
here's a great example of that quickly, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but the biggest change to the entire meta of the game, which drastically altered it, was the focus point change. Drastically altered. Almost everyone is going to be much more optimal if they can get all three as soon as they can. And that change, the actual change, a few words were removed from the refocus activity. It was so subtle that even I remember hearing that, like, when it was announced that this was a change on like a Paizo stream, like someone who had like edited that section was like, I edited that section. I didn't even realize those words were removed from refocus, because, you know, it's easy to miss. It was just, it flowed more nicely and other things like that. So you're right, Ronald. The smallest changes are hard to catch and can make a big difference.
I have breaking news.
What?
Well, because I'm talking to the Foundry team, because they do all of our work, and I'm talking to the Ians, and you can actually see the chat mark as I asked them if there's going to be a change log for all this changes between PF2 and PF2 Remaster, and they said yes, there's going to be, and it's big, and it's big. It's a journal entry, and it's massive.
Oh, so Foundry has
changed.
Foundry, right?
Foundry has it, whether Paizo is going to have it or not.
Correct. Because I've been talking to the Ians, because Ian does all of our work, and he's the one who's been doing the changes for Pathfinder 2nd edition.
We have a few non-Ians now too, right? Like we have Ians and we have another additional non-Ian.
We have non-Ians, but they do our adventures. They do other stuff. But Ian he works on the Pathfinder Remaster. And so Ian has been very busy working on that, and I literally just asked him. He says they also have merge requests showing every change file. Oh, that's right. That's how you do it. So if you're a coder, what you do is whenever you make a change, it will outline inside the merge requests every change. So it's actually very easy to find anything that was changed, because it will literally point out every word, every character ever changed, and that's through the magic of coding. So there you go.
So for whether it's going to have hyperlink PDFs, I have no idea.
That I doubt, but whether it's done by Paizo, I have no idea. But I guarantee when that changelog comes out, people will use that to reverse engineer everything.
And also that's a huge value add for Foundry. Like if Paizo doesn't put out a big changelog, I feel like if I was someone who was just in the community and I was like, I don't know if I need a virtual tabletop at all.
I wonder if
I would pay Foundry's asking price purely to receive the changelog if Paizo didn't put out a changelog, because of how valuable I find that changelog would be,
and you
to
own
me.
It forever.
I would pay $50 for a changelog. Maybe and I'm someone who usually doesn't pay extra for premium things, but that changelog is so useful to me because I love the original content and I want to be able to use them together. He gave
it to me. I have it.
There you go. You have it.
Yeah.
He even has the changelog.
He just sent it to me.
Okay.
Let me see how big it is.
You may not know the answer. Do you know anything from having worked on publications why a PDF would not have hyperlinks? Are there obstacles to that?
Yeah, you got to do them by hand. It's a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah, it takes many person hours. There's a big labor cost.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can think of, but there could be other reasons involving like file size or something, but I doubt it.
It's nothing like that. I mean, well, I'll tell you the way it works is there are ways to semi-automate it, but with hyperlinks, those mostly are done by hand, and if you have to do an update, you got to redo those.
Yeah, you'd want to do it by hand for sure.
And that's the problem. Like, so when I do mine, I have a plugin that I bought because I have bookmarks. And the bookmarks, I mean, like I have literally 1,000 bookmarks of Jewel the Indigo Isle. And as long as what you're bookmarking to is on the same page, you're okay, because that does by page. But if I come out with a new version, I have to be very conscious if something is moving to a different page, because that will mess up my bookmarks, because I can save and export my bookmarks and re-import them. So if I do a version 2, I re-import my bookmarks so I don't have to do it twice, because it takes forever. But it only is as good as the last time you did it. And that's the only reason that works, is because that's page by page. Hyperlinks are based on location in the file. So there are probably tools that make this more efficient that I don't know that allows you to do this. But it's very hard to do easily as opposed to on a website where you can just in a website inside databases, you can literally just say, have these words linked to this section, and it just does it. Like it's magic, so you can't really do it in a PDF that easily.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there's your answers to that. I'm going to give a final take. Final take. We've now gone through 10 videos on the remaster over here. Ronald has been doing a lot of them as well. I think that the remaster it has necessary OGL changes to get out of being in a very dangerous spot for Paizo in case WotC decided to do something to them again. It has a lot of really cool updates and things that I'm excited to see. And I really like the remaster, as everyone has seen throughout this. Obviously, of course, there's going to be a few things that slipped in. It was done quickly. I don't think that makes it a rush job. I think that makes it a tour de force that they completed it in that much time. And anyway, a product of that length usually has a few things that are going to be a little weird in it. That's what errata are for eventually. And some of these things, you don't even need that much errata to, or they won't be that disruptive. So I think that the remaster is awesome, and I'm very excited about it.
I agree in general with all that, and I think we're not going to have a situation where people want to play the older version of anything, which was one of the concerns that was brought out. Things generally have moved upward slightly in power, if there's any change. And I on the complaint of whether there are editing mistakes, I think if they had given themselves another month, there would have been errors. But also, another complaint that I see out there, and I read complaints and I read discussions online. One other thing you hear is that people complaining that they're releasing new books after they just bought the core rulebook, and so that's an argument for releasing sooner than they currently are. So they can't win either way. I think they made the right decisions, it seems to me, overall. I really like the user-friendly. I don't have my physical copy yet, but I'm really looking forward to those sidebars.
Yeah,
and navigating it much more easily.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm excited. For people wondering, I asked these folks, and they've accommodated me. I couldn't stay on too long because I'm gonna be working on my wizard video today. That is one class I think could have used more love. That's my preliminary hot take.
I don't think that's at least that contentious of a take, in that many people have said something similar. Wizard is just a contentious class, so any take that you make that's extreme in either direction, I guess, isn't that contentious for one crowd and is contentious for the other. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is a contentious take.
I don't think people will disagree with it, but people like to. We'll see.
People like to. Good use of words.
I really like the new wizard, but I also see that some classes, especially cleric, that didn't really need as much of a power boost as it got, are making me feel like I would be very tempted to play a cleric. They're very different classes, but for some of the things that they have. Wizard has just always been my old favorite class, though, and it still has a lot of good things, but you are right, that is one of the only things that went down overall. And so it's going to have a different feel for that reason.
It had the most changes. It had the most moving parts.
Cleric may have had more changes because Cleric is longer, because it has more domains.
Cleric and Wizard, which are basically same sides.
And then Witch is right up there with Wizard as well. But Witch was...
We said that yesterday.
Witch was all buffs.
Yeah, all the spell... Anything that was a spellcaster had massive changes.
Except Bard and Druid.
You guys are kind of ahead of me. You've gone through all the classes. I've been kind of in the weeds comparing texts.
Oh, we were in the weeds with classes.
We sourced it out to 3 every time.
I mean,
Really, Mark? It was really
You
one.
say that, but it was all pushed on me, and I'm exhausted. I'm gonna go into it in
But he
Odin
wrote
sleep.
the rules. He literally co-wrote the rules. I hate to say, you have a huge leg up on everyone else on planet Earth.
I had a comparative advantage.
Except for Logan.
It makes sense.
You and Logan, that's it.
Yeah. Logan and I wrote a high percentage of the nitty-gritty and on-the-ground text because of the fact, you're right, because of the fact that Jason was doing high-level meetings. He was running the Knights of Everflame stream. And Stephen Reddy McFarland was making sure the best area was on track, which had some external people. So that is true. It did take many hours to do the textual, full nitty-gritty analysis of every class, and I am tired now.
Yes,
but I'm happy.
You had to do that
anyhow. I feel good about it.
You had to do it anyhow.
I feel good
for
about
it. For your work. So
yep.
It had to be done one way or the other. So it's either done now or done later. And this way,
I choose A, Dustin. Dustin says choose one. A, reviewing classes, or B, sleep. I choose A.
Oh, yeah.
I have to congratulate you for completing your cycle while I continue in mine.
It was actually Mark's idea. He was like, "Oh, we're gonna do every one." I was like, "Okay."
I said this is gonna be a lot, and I think it may be too many streams, but I feel like there's enough content that we could do one for each day. And Steven's like, "That's great, we're doing it." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "It will delay our other stuff." And Steven's like, "No, we're doing it."
Once in a lifetime. I literally said, "Yeah."
He said it was a once in a lifetime opportunity to do something cool like this, and he's right. Like, I've never gotten to do it's kind of a deep dive on classes onto a stream like this.
Mm-hmm.
Dustin wants to know if I'm going to be reviewing every entry into Remastered Bestiary. No.
Mm-hmm.
Will not be doing that. This was Steven said it was a once in a lifetime. That means I don't have to do it again.
Well, no. Well, we'll do it again with Monster Core, but it's only going to, first of all, it's not going to take that long, Monster Core.
Yeah.
That's one book. And then we'll do it again with Player Core 2, but Player Core 2, I don't think will be I think it'll be popular, but it has less classes.
We might want to do one for every class, though.
Oh, no, we will want to do one for every class.
It's the same number of classes.
It's the same number of classes,
but I don't think they're as popular as the core classes.
Well, you say that, Steven, but in your game, you said that
my game, that's all they play.
None of your players played anything from Player Core 1 except for Rogue.
I think those are the better classes, personally.
They all played sorcerers.
And monks.
And I think we're going to see more changes if you're looking at pure quantity than in this book.
No, definitely.
Yeah, because I think they chose. There's a secret. Intelligent weapons was not last by accident for your monsters. It was by far the one with the most corner kids and the hardest. I think they chose classes that they wanted to look at more, and ones that had dragon stuff that needed monster core to be solidified to go in the second one. So I think you're definitely right, Ronald.
Yeah. Also, I think if they see any. My personal theory, too, is that the big gap between this book and the next is that in case they're like, oh, there's something, we want to tweak a bit in the system, we can do that with Core 2 after seeing the reception to Core 1.
It's possible, but
like Death and Dying rules.
I don't know why everyone's so up about all this Death and Dying rules.
My group has used the one that was clarified to be the entire time, and we've had no deaths.
So what's the whole thing? Is that supposedly so your wounded goes up as well as?
Or no, when your wounded is there, your dying goes up every time. The fact that I thought that this was the rule even from the beginning when you were killing us with centipedes, by the way, is why I said at the beginning, don't heal that person yet until we can get them a lot of hit points, because if they go down again when they're wounded and they're being poisoned, they're done. Which is, I guess, true either way. If you're poisoned and you're down and people can't get you back up, you're gonna probably die from wounded.
That's how you always
pretty quickly.
Die. In fact, the only way any of my players die in games is persistent damage.
Persistent and poison. Yeah,
that's it. That's
but the
literally
way
the
way that it was meant to be when it was written. And that is in the what you call it, the GM screen and the cards and everywhere else, is that it adds every time, which is even worse.
What do you mean every
time the dying increases, the wounded?
I thought you guys would have had a stream about this by now, Steve.
Steven, we've
this has
mentioned it.
been
We've
the
mentioned
theme
it.
I know
Like,
everyone's
we've mentioned
talking about it,
3
but
times.
we've talked about it because there's 4 different death and dying rules.
Yes, there are a lot of
there's
different
4
places where it says
versions,
different things.
Okay, we got another one. Big deal.
So
I've
the
seen
one
them
from the
all.
playtest, which is also the one on the cards and the screen, is the one that all of the designers thought was going into the original core rulebook, but it wasn't because one of the places it got
4
changed, and we don't
versions.
know why.
Choose the one you like. Okay,
Yeah,
they
play
might
the
have
one
done
you wanna
this on
play.
purpose.
Play the one.
They
did not.
They
They did
Dickens
not.
us.
They
You
did
know?
not do it on purpose.
They
Steven.
did it on purpose. They did it
No.
like. Do you know what I'm talking about with Dickens? What he used to do?
Where he changed endings and had multiple
Yes.
different versions, but
Yes.
that was sometimes because his publisher forced him to.
because he did that for Great Expectations because he had the original bad ending and
Yeah.
everyone was complained. So then he had the mediocre ending and then he had the super happy ending and then he said,
Yeah, because his publisher
choose
wanted a
the one
happy
you
ending.
like and use that as the ending for Great Expectations. You know who also did that? Breaking Bad did that. There's the last 3 episodes. There is a good happy ending. There's the incredibly bad sad ending, and then the true ending, which is like sort of not but like it's not great for everyone. Everyone sort of gets their comeuppance. But you could choose the one you like, either one. It's actually a very interesting storytelling method. My point being, dude, it's your game. Choose the freaking way. There's literally 4 versions of Death and Dying. Choose the one you like.
It's
and use
another
that.
it's another knob to turn in your game.
In fact, consider using, if you don't want characters to die a lot in your game, consider using a different role for Death and Dying. Heck, as the design team, we came up with like 40 of them, possibly.
Oh my god, let's put them all out. And then people are going to be like,
no. We had like 40 options
that
because we all
Build a
had,
system.
we all had one thing.
40?
Yes.
I want to see 40. I want to see that.
Like 40 variants.
My god, you're right.
That would be a fun stream, Mark. Go through some of those crazy versions.
Every designer had one thing that they cared about. About more than everybody else.
Do you remember them all?
And because what I cared about was...
I guarantee you remember.
What I cared about was that
we can release a book of dying.
I wanted a death and dying system that did not encourage you to attack down characters, because if you have a yo-yo type situation, then the only way to win is you have to attack the down characters before they're here.
Right. We used to
I wanted to make sure that
I just want to thank praise Kaiser for being so metal. You guys are hardcore.
And Jason wanted to make it so that it was tense and scary and that you might die. And
we all knew Jason was behind it. We all
But, you know, he didn't want to necessarily kill you. He just wanted you to feel like you might die. That was very important.
That's
so anything that didn't give you that tension right from the get-go, he was like, I'd like there to be tension and drama. Whereas, you know, like, Logan was like, I want to make sure it's easy enough to run, that it doesn't have a ton of fiddly bits that are going to draw people out when they're dying. So, like, everybody had their own thing. So here's one example of a death and dying system that doesn't fit Jason's criteria, but might fit mine and Jason's board that you could use in your game.
All you people who waited to the very end are going to get to hear.
Here's an example. It's completely different. It's completely different.
Is this one of the 40?
Yes.
It was one that was proposed. Like, no one seriously considered this one, but that's of the 40, there weren't that many that were really had a chance. But yeah, I think it was one of the ones that was proposed. Here's how it works. Your character just went down in the fight. Okay? You now have 2 choices. Are you safe and out of the fight? Nothing else will happen to you unless the whole team loses, and then it's a total party kill. But assuming the team wins, they can bring you back. You're safe. You can't possibly die. You escape somehow. The narration explains it. Or you could choose danger. If you choose danger, then on your turn, you just went, your next turn, you wake up. Maybe even. Or you decide how nice you're going to be to the people who choose danger, by the way. You can also leave it as is. Where you choose danger, you wake up, or maybe you don't. Maybe you are still dying. But now you can die. And just like some very harsh thing happens to you if you drop again, if you get the free wake up. Or you're using like a very ungenerous death and dying rule after that. It can be simple. Like you're up now on your next turn, and you get maybe even more than 1 hit point. You get some number of hit points, but if you drop again, you're just dead. And you chose that heroic last stand. So any variation on this one is great because you're not going to die unless you opt into it. And it removes the thing that I had a problem with, which is that with even like some other death and dying, which is you can't win against healing if it's very yo-yo-ish without attacking the downed characters. And I don't want there to be any incentive to attack down characters. I want deadliness to go down overall. And my games, I had if you count Breath of Life as being a kill, if they die and then get brought back with Death of Life, in my Rise of the Rune Lord game in PF1, I killed triple-digit number of characters, like over 100. Now that was only like I think like a little over a dozen permanent deaths because all like 80 some of the others had a Breath of Life cast on them afterwards. PF1's dying rules were not great. They came from 3rd edition because basically if you ever knock someone unconscious, especially at higher levels, there's virtually a 100% chance you killed them too in PF1. And that's why this happened. Whereas in PF2, I, the same GM as I was before, have killed 0 characters in all these years since PF2 came out. I killed 1 person in the playtest, Luis. Luis Loza. It was his only death he's ever had, too. In the playtest, by doing an Extreme Plus encounter where 2 fights, they added 2 fights together and it became Extreme Plus, and it had a death effect that instantly killed it 0, which is the only kill that I've had in either the playtest or the final.
You're going to be known as the triple-digit death GM now.
Yeah, I mean, Breath of Life means
thought Dark Souls was easy.
Very few of them actually died, but in PF2, I've had 0, and I've been playing the Death and Dying rules the way that is now they've clarified the entire time.
I've had only.
Okay, I do have one question though. The wounded definition between the playtest, and I put this up in my video, between the last playtest document for 2E and the first printing of the core rulebook, the definition of wounded changed. It used to say every time your dying value when you gain or increase your dying value, you increase it by your wounded value.
That's right.
But the wounded definition in the condition section in the appendix of the core rulebook removed the word increased. It just says when you gain the dying condition, you increase it by your wounded up.
It sure did. I noted that in an errata pass and brought it to the team and was like, now it's inconsistent in these places. Which one of these do we want? Do we want to change it? Like, and everyone's like, no, we should go with what we had. I don't know why it says that here. So then because we had to decide what we were gonna do for the GM screen and the condition cards, which we noticed before that, and we're like, no, keep it the way that everyone was like, keep it the way that we had it. So that's what we did. Of course, then that was a long time ago.
Still confusing, but
yeah, it is pretty confusing.
Yeah.
I think it's
and
possible
I'm wondering how
it's possible that somebody thought that gain and increase.
Someone had a thought.
Somebody must have thought that gain and increase was redundant, even though it's not. That's my best guess.
Okay, gotcha.
Because they might have thought that that gaining like includes increase, but with game rules you have to be very careful. And so my guess is that it happened during maybe like copy fitting or like just a later pass. Sometimes things change during approvals that nobody knows why they changed. It was not even, because in a normal editing process, editors will also check with the designers and we'll do it all together. But during approvals, sometimes it's the last minute and you have to change something else and that adjusts copy fit and someone's just quickly entering that stuff and you never know.
I'm looking at my copy and yes, there's not a whole lot of space at the end of the paragraph. So maybe someone did.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I wasn't.
Maybe a zealous copy editor removed 2 words.
Yeah, someone messed up.
Because that's a thing. You got to make it fit the page.
Yeah, no, that's copy
Look,
fit.
I can tell you this, which is that was not a section. I'm pretty sure I was copy fitting, but I can tell you that the descriptions of the spells from like A through G, I think, that's as far as I got with cutting pages. by copy fitting from the spells before we ran out of time. It was like, does Mark have enough time to cut by copy fitting so that we can save pages of magic items or other sections, or do we have to cut those pages and just keep the spells as is? I saved so many pages so we didn't have to cut magic items, but those spells from A through G, I think on average their descriptions are worse than the spells from H through Z because of the amount that I copy fit them, and they're simpler, I guess, but I feel like some of the words that used to be in there made them like a little bit better, and that's just what happens with copy fit.
Copy fitting. Okay.
All right, so you really need to make your
Or do you
wizard
have more
video.
questions?
I do.
But you have
Oh
so many
yeah,
questions.
and plug.
You can have me on your
Warriors
show. I'll
covering
answer your other
Remaster.
questions.
Check out my channel.
Yeah, check out Ronald and have me on your show. I'll answer your other questions. Then you don't have to ask
Have
them
me
now.
on the show. We can do a whole thing on the remaster.
No, have Steven.
I want to do yeah. Thumbnail is the remaster worse?
Oh yeah, are the remaster names or better?
Are the names just bad or terrible? It's like,
You
are the
can say, are the
remaster
names worse or better, and then you show
No,
a
there's
picture
no
of
worse or
Steven.
better.
Did the remaster get better names? And why is the answer no?
And you can have Steven's face next to the worst and your face next to the better.
Like, it's like the remaster renaming the worst of all time, or is it the worst or the worst of all time? There you go.
I like the names. I said it was my favorite thing, Steven, and you're being so mean to the names.
What names? The renames? The new names?
Yeah.
They suck.
No. Most
Not
of them
all
are
of
great. There's a few of them that aren't as
terrible.
good as the original, but they're still usually not bad.
Nope. Bad. Bad. We'll scientifically prove it. I'll get some people and we'll have them take surveys, and
there we go.
We'll see. We'll have
non-gamers take surveys.
I will figure out a way to get this done. You can hire what do we use for our thing at Survey? What do we use? Survey Monkey?
Survey Monkey. You can.
Survey Monkey. You can hire them to like do A/B testing for you. So we might have to do that. That will be an interesting stream. There you go.
All right. So thanks for being on even longer than you thought you were going to be, Ronald. I hope we answered all your questions well. And thanks, chat, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the GM Core and other things with us for our grand finale of our 10-day extravaganza for the remaster.
Extravaganza.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You need to come on.
We
more
always love to have you
frequently.
on, but I know you're not free on Wednesdays generally, and you were more free on Tuesdays back when we did it then.
Yeah, well, he's too busy with his life. How dare you have a life? Well, we'll have you on again. I mean, and next time it won't be like 2 years, but
it hasn't been that long.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. I think it's been like a year, though.
It's been at least
almost.
a year.
A year.
Well,
Okay.
But I've been with you, Ronald, in the one where you showed yourself like putting me on the witness stand. Or something. I've been on with you more recently, but I don't think you've been able to make it to us for a while.
That is correct. Well, check out his channel, and then next week, something. I don't know what we're gonna have.
Steven, you have multiple amazing topics that you've told me about. And I'm not even sure which one of them is the best one, because you have some like scoops on certain things, and the fact that the IO9 just fired like all of their people, and there's a lot of
depressed.
There's a lot of stuff.
I heard about that. I actually was really not happy last night.
I can't believe it. It is awful. So there's a lot of topics.
There's a lot going on. It's all depressing. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a good weekend. Everything's all depressing, but you can still have a good weekend.